Thank you for joining us. I, as always, am Lio Convoy, and I am joined by my good friend Michael French at RetroBlasting.
Hey man, what's going on?
Oh, same thing, different day. I've already put out my personal review on Superman Smashes the Klan, but this is a guy who I saw this guy's video back when it was announced, and then I saw his video after the book came out. And now that I'm finally done with my review, I would like to address these videos. The reason I have Michael on for this is twofold. Number one, he, like me, is balanced, but he's more evenly balanced. I have anger issues, as you all are here for, but there's also the fact Michael is a lifelong hardcore Superman fan. So what I
Yep,
did in preparation for this, so Michael knew what was going on, is I sent him the book, the trade paperback of Superman Smashes the Klan. Were you able to finish that?
I was able to read the whole thing, and at a leisurely pace, no less. So,
Yeah, it was a really fun book, in my opinion. It was made for children. It was made for the scholastic book fairs and whatnot. I totally would have bought something like that when I was a kid. But what we're gonna do is there is a YouTuber who goes by the screen name the FourthAge, and his videos, by my estimation, since he likes using that word, I'm gonna use it against him. He makes the most histrionic, piss poor arguments, the most outlandish statements, and if he is wrong, he never retracts it. He only doubles down. So we're going to take the piss out of him. That's literally what this entire stream is about. We're going to go through his video about this, and Michael's here so he can fact check me if I'm wrong, because he also had the book too. So we're going to go through this guy's video, these two videos on this topic, and we're going to see what we have to say about it. So you ready, Michael?
I'm ready.
All right, let's suffer together.
Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So, today I'm going to do a little review of Superman Smashes the Klan. And I'm going to do this for two different reasons. Number one, because I think this is the perfect picture of everything that is wrong with comics today. But it's unique in that it is a very subtle DC everything that is wrong with comics today, as opposed to Marvel's in your face everything that's wrong with comics.
Now, is he going to give us examples of what he's talking about? Is he going to detail anything? No, he's just going to be very vague because that way he doesn't have to retract anything. No, he's not telling you what the problem is. He's just telling
Right,
you there is one. Really
right.
helpful there, buddy.
Yeah, he's just telling you problems exist. Beware. Yeah.
And number two, I'm going to do this because I did do a previous video about this comic. When I first heard about it coming out,
Oh, looks like I got the thing backwards. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to go to the other video. So just give me a moment here, Michael. I'll load the correct
Okay.
one. So I
Oh,
apologize,
no.
chat. That's on me, but that's also easily fixed. Let's see here. Also, I noticed we have a whole bunch of dislikes on this video out of nowhere, which is absolutely hilarious.
I'm trying to figure out one, like, you know, uh, today when I did my live stream, there was somebody who noticed that I had a dislike while people were waiting for the live stream to start, and the guy was just like, "Who does that?" And I said, "Well, dedicated haters with nothing else to do. Like they just live to dislike certain YouTube channels." And who knows, maybe somebody heard that I was going to be on it too, not to throw ego into the mix, but you've got dedicated haters, I've got dedicated haters. It's a perfect storm of pre-roll dislikes.
Now it's down to only one. Nice. You ever thought maybe our haters are our biggest fans? Because they either way, it drives the algorithm. Let's go ahead and get into this dude's video. So let's go ahead here.
hey,
Okay.
how you doing? This is RJ. So, today I'm going to do a little review of Superman Smashes the Klan. And I'm going to do this for two different reasons. Number one, because I think this is the perfect picture.
What did it? It went back to what we initially had. What the
It,
heck?
it did. It did. It went back to what we initially had.
Here,
Something screwy in the world of YouTube.
let's try this again. All right. Let me see here. Enter. Man, it is not wanting to do this right.
Do you want me to back out of this particular watch together and then you send a new link?
No, I'm just trying to figure out what the actual damage is here.
Of everything that is wrong with comics today. But it's unique in
That's really weird. I wonder why it's not working. Give me a second here.
Okay.
at the
Yeah, in the meantime, just to keep our listeners engaged, I I had a really good time reading this this comic. I haven't really sat down and read a good graphic novel in quite a few months. And when I started reading this one, I really plugged into it. I was just telling Melinda, the main character in it is a little girl. She's a Chinese girl, but her parents call her Roberta. It's set in 1946, and they call her Roberta as what was a regular cultural thing back then to try and fit in with mainstream American society. You know, give yourself a more, you know, Caucasian sounding name and all that kind of stuff. And but there's this moment in it where Superman, sort of like after Act 1. Nope, same one.
What the heck? It jumped to it and then it stopped.
That's weird.
Hey, how you doing?
Nope.
This is really strange. There's some chicanery afoot.
Hey.
Hi. Nope. Same one.
Give me a second here. Let me see.
Sure.
Here. Let me go ahead and put that up here, and I'm going to try this again. So give me a moment here. Watch together. Create room. Paste. Shut up, Matt. I don't want anything to do with you. Let's try this again. Huh, even in a brand new watch together, it's not working.
What are kids in the...
I wonder if there's something on that video, unless it's because we're already in a pre-existing room.
No, I reloaded the room and it's still doing it. Let me see here. Hold on. Let me test it.
About a new series that's coming out from DC.
Aha, I got it.
Okay.
So let me send you the link. Sorry about the technical issues, everybody. Boomer at the helm here. There we go.
All right. I've joined the room.
All right, so let me go ahead and remove the image. All right, so let's go ahead and start again.
DC in the fall called Superman Smashes the Klan. And no, I'm not joking. And I'm surprised that no one else has been talking about this yet. But the reason why I want to talk about this is because in my videos, I concentrate on Marvel a lot. And I say that I concentrate on Marvel because the crazy is just on display at Marvel. They have this quote-unquote progressive agenda, and the craziness of this agenda is just on display at Marvel.
Is it going to tell you what the agenda is or give you evidence that they have one?
He's repeating himself a lot too, so I don't know what he's trying to do. Is he trying to drive a nail head, or is he going to show the evidence?
As much as I was harsh on the Animaniacs reboot, there was at least one really good joke that the brain said in reference to politics. A lie is just a truth that has a truth is just a lie that hasn't been repeated enough yet.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
thank you for the super chat, Blake. Let's go ahead and continue.
But I also put in the caveat at the end that the same goes for DC. They just hide the crazy much better. And this is my example here of how DC handles the crazy, but they still have the same agenda. They do it in a much more subtle way. Whereas you have Marvel, and they're just taking a piece of dynamite and lighting the fuse and saying, nothing bad is going to happen with this. With DC, they just subtly take this piece of dynamite, put it over next to a raging, uncontrollable fire, and stand back and say, well, if it blows up, it's not our fault. This is the way DC subtly handles these issues. And I'll have to say right off the bat, I really, really hope I'm wrong with this series that's going to...
You are, but your video that you have after you read it doubles down on your lies instead of recants them.
It's so strange. Okay, so first of all, I guess I'm not... I hope he tries to clarify his position, because this story is an adaptation of a 1946 Superman radio drama. I don't understand, and this book is set in 1946, so I'm not understanding how this is DC Dynamite near a burning building. I'm not.
I'm going to tell you right now, I know you pretty well. By the time we're done with these videos, you are going to be shocked at some of the dumb thing this guy says.
Okay.
You are genuinely going to be shocked at some of the arguments he makes. But let's continue.
Going to come out.
All right.
Because when I heard about freedom fighters originally, and they're going to be fighting Nazis, I said to myself, oh, here we go. But I was quite pleasantly surprised. Freedom Fighters has actually turned out to be what I think is the best comic that DC has put out this year. But when I look at all the stuff surrounding Superman Smashes the Klan, it really doesn't appear like this is going to be the same type of thing. So what I'm going to be talking about is an article put out by The Hollywood Reporter, and I'm going to put the link in the description if you want to read it. It's actually a fairly long article compared to most of the ones that I go over. But right now I want to concentrate on who they are talking to, and it is the writer of this series called Jean-Len Yang. And Yang is, I would say, the epitome of this DC subtle approach to this progressive agenda.
Just for context here, if you talk about progressivism in so much as don't be a piece of garbage, comics have literally always done that.
Yeah, that's what. Okay, Superman fighting Nazis is not a new concept.
No.
At all. I mean, he was literally fighting Nazis in his 1940s comic books.
And you have characters like Captain America, who was literally made as a piece of the Nazis can eat a dick before we got into the war.
Yes. Wonder Woman was the same way. Batman got into the war. I'm just not following his logic here. I'm not sure what he's fighting against, because Superman, especially, of all the superheroes ever made, and I'm not trying to take anything away from any of the other classic heroes, but Superman is the poster child for justice for all.
Yes.
So, okay, all right.
Let's continue.
Because I have read things by Yang before, like The Terrifics, and I kind of liked it. And he's not very heavy-handed with his quote-unquote agenda. But I went to his Twitter just to check out exactly what he's saying about this series that he's going to be writing. And it seemed to me, again, that he was very subtle in what he does. Most of the tweets, if not all of the tweets that he himself puts out, are promotion of his books, which is great. He promotes his books, he's trying to sell them, he's trying to generate hype for the books that he writes. But he likes to retweet other people as well. He never goes into this quote-unquote progressive agenda himself, but he retweets things from other people. And those retweets would include things like white privilege, and how that white privilege should pay for slave reparations, and how editors need to carve out a special section that is reserved for people of color and disabled people and the like, so that they can make their way into comics. And this is a
God forbid somebody want to care for disenfranchised people. And real quick, if you notice, he's not pulling up any of these tweets, is he?
No, and here's another thing too. A lot of the arguments that I've heard from this kind of thing about entertainment, whether it's movies or comic books or whatever, about keep the politics out of this stuff, even though you could argue politics have always been there in some form or fashion. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that they didn't used to be, and now they are, and now people are mad. Why isn't he sticking to the topic as well? He's talking about this dude's alleged, inferred politics from social media, but when is he going to talk about the book? I thought this was about the book.
Wait, because I actually wound up getting into his comment section, and I annihilated his video in text, and he did not care to do a proper response to me. So let's continue here.
A progressive mindset. And I think this is the subtle touch of DC right here. Because I've said this before, and I'll go over it again in this video later, that these progressive people, what they do is they present an argument according to logical fallacies, usually according to appeal to emotion. And so I hate to use logical fallacies, and I do not employ them myself.
Yes, you do. You're just too dumb to notice. Sorry, continuing.
But you really have to look at logical fallacies, because this is the way that these people actually operate. They operate according to selling you an idea by emotion. That's appeal to emotion, which is a logical fallacy. And I would say that DC employs guilt by association in a very unique way. That is to say that they take these things, like Superman Smashes the Klan. They give it to this guy who is just slightly progressive. You know, he doesn't overtly stick it in your face, but he is connected to a bunch of other people who are very, very progressive. And all they need to do is have him promote it and then retweet these things from these other people who are very progressive, and they are the ones, these people who are connected with him, that are going to take this thing and make it explode.
That's odd hot prop fallacy.
Guilt by association.
Yeah. He's saying that they imply it, but that's what he's doing.
That's exactly my point. I'm like, wait, if you don't feel like you're part of this argument, then why are you getting involved in the argument?
Well, here's the kicker. This guy who is getting mad because he tweets progressive people. Dude, he had Sargon of Akkad in his comment section on this video. Sargon, who destroyed his own political party. Sargon, who in the middle of debating whether or not children can consent, made a comment because he was arguing with somebody who was saying they could, because the guy told him, tell me I couldn't consent right now when I was that age. You tell me that. And Sargon's response was, it depends on the child, I suppose. Like, if we're doing that, why aren't you holding yourself by your own standards, big boy? It's just so doggone stupid.
I just can't believe that this guy is trying to target a Superman comic. It's about Superman stopping the Klan.
It gets worse. But here's a kicker that's going on about how, well, they're trying to make space for these specific individuals, these progressive values. The entire point of Superman is he has the power to help, and therefore he will.
Right, exactly.
Of course, if somebody genuine, and even Christopher Reeve said, this isn't just a character. Like, this is a set of ideals and values that people generally should consider living by. But this guy's like, well, you shouldn't help people that are disenfranchised or might have disabilities because that's a progressive value. No, just continuing.
Now, again, that's guilt by association. I'm using that logical fallacy, not because I'm employing it as part of my argument, but because this is what DC is doing.
No, you are using it as part of your argument. In fact, it's also conspiratorial because you're assuming all these machinations are happening behind the lines instead of him genuinely disagreeing with these people.
And genuinely just wanting to adapt a 1946 radio play that he related to.
Which, by the way, I listened to in its entirety.
Yeah. It's like, this is not rocket science. Like, there's Occam's razor, people. Okay.
Also, because I listened to that and I really enjoyed it, and because I do a lot of driving at work and working solo, I've kind of gotten addicted to radio plays now. So I'm going through the catalog of the old Shadow radio plays, and if he doesn't like Superman, he is not going to like the Shadow.
Oh yeah, dude, I was about to bring up the Shadow. I was like, you're going to be listening to the Shadow soon. You already are. That's awesome. Shadow's great.
Yeah, he is.
Shadow
He's freaking rad.
Great. Yeah.
All right, let's continue on.
They're taking this dynamite and they're setting it next to a raging fire. And if it blows up, they're going to stand back and say, hey, it's not our fault. We didn't light the fuse. No, but you put it next to people who will light the fuse. Because I can see these progressive people employing another logical fallacy, which would be equivocation, in order to sell this idea as something else to the comic readers. That is to say, they're going to connect this old idea of the KKK, which is Superman Smashes the Klan, and connect it to, who do you think? They're going to connect it to modern-day Republicans.
I said this in my previous video, and I'll repeat it here. If you're worried that your values are going to be conflated with that of the Klan, you need to reassess.
Yeah, if you don't think you're part of the argument, you shouldn't be anywhere near the argument. And if you are putting yourself in the argument, you need to reassess your values and your stance. Like, okay, here's where I am right now mentally, Thomas, with this. The prevailing argument amongst critics like this guy is that today's entertainment, today's comics, today's movies, today's whatever are infused with something that's troublesome to them, and they want to go back to the way things, quote, used to be in comics and movies and whatever. But this book is based on a 1946 radio drama. Therefore, it is an adaptation of one of those pieces of entertainment from back when he claims to believe everything was great. Okay, All right. Well, whatever.
Continuing.
And to the idea that anybody who wants any kind of immigration control whatsoever, even if that's just a immigration that has some control on it and has some system in order to deal with things, they're all members of the KKK.
Hey,
What?
Michael, you read the book. How much of immigration control or immigration discussion was actually made in the book?
There is no immigration control discussion in this book. This book is about the classic, To Kill a Mockingbird dilemma, where all the people in the town are legally there, and trouble is being caused toward a few by a few. There is no immigration politics in this at all.
Also, the Klan doesn't care if the immigration's legal or not. They don't like it.
Right. Yeah. The Klan is not exactly somebody that's wanting to form ICE or anything like that. They're already vigilantes for injustice. Okay. My brain is just doing backflips right now. All right,
Continuing.
This is conflagration of two ideas. This is equivocation, basically, what they are doing with their argument. And when I went through Yang's Twitter feed, I saw this exact thing, because he likes to retweet Greg Peck. Now, Greg Peck works for Marvel, and the crazy is on display at Marvel, and he writes things like Agents of Atlas. And right off the bat, when I went from Yang's Twitter feed to Peck's Twitter feed, I saw exactly what I was looking for, because he has me blocked. Now, I have never visited his Twitter feed ever before. I've only talked about one of his books in a tangent in one of my videos, so I really doubt he has any clue who I am whatsoever.
Dude, if it's anything like these tangents, while blocking's not generally my value, I don't blame him. Frankly, I'd get up in your face and make fun of you. Which is what I'm doing now. But I've noticed a lot of these CommentGate people. They say, "Well, I was just making a civil statement to these people." But when you go look at actually what they said, they're being the biggest sort of dicks you possibly could, and then they get blocked and try to pretend they're the victim. He found what he was looking for because he was desperately trying to find some way to condemn this dude.
I'll say this much: that whole thing of hit and run on the internet, say your piece and then run off and block. I've experienced that so many times in the 8.5 years or whatever it's been that I've been on YouTube, and it's really like a standard tactic, like a hammer. It's endemic, I guess, is what I'm saying about internet behavior. It's not just that.
Sure. If you apply his logic here to you and I,
right,
he would assume I really hate Thundercats.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right.
His logic is, well, these two, they converse, they communicate, therefore they agree upon everything. If he were to apply it to you and I, he would just immediately assume I don't like Thundercats, or in the opposite, that you really like it. It's just a really dumb, lack of nuance, lack of intellectual honesty way to look at things.
Sure. I mean, like I've said a million times on my various live streams, my buddy Tim and I, we have completely different views on movies and pop culture from a consumption standpoint. In other words, the types of stories we like. And, he likes Attack of the Clones the best in the Star Wars series. I like The Empire Strikes Back. I hate Attack of the Clones. His least favorite is The Empire Strikes Back, but we don't base our friendship and our relationship on pop culture stuff, just like you and I. Mm-hmm. I don't count my friends based on who hates Thundercats with me. Like that's not a thing, and I really don't hate Thundercats, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Real quick to Amnesia Lane, would have been nice if you had invited him as your guest. Why would I? I made a comment. The dude completely ignored it. He completely regressed and did not walk back any dishonest thing he said. Why in the world would I invite him to come on here? And more importantly, how would I? I don't even have Twitter anymore.
Oh, so is this somebody saying that they don't want me on the chat? They want the other guy?
I think the guy that made this video. I don't think it's a either or. I think it's, well, you should have invited him. People like this never take responsibility. They never take responsibility. So here, I'll tell you this much. I'd be more than happy to talk to him after we are done with the two videos themselves. I'll bring him on screen and we'll have conversation if he wants to show up. I know full well he's got to be aware of this because people like that, they have these things on Google alerts. So let's go ahead and continue here.
but he has me blocked. I'm sure because I am associated, that is to say, I subscribe to some of the people that he doesn't like. Like,
you don't have to say that is to say. I know you're trying to sound smart, but you just don't. Continuing.
Richard Meyer. And so I'm part of a block list. And so right off the bat, you have these tolerant, progressive people mass blocking people. And I'm not joking when I say this, but one of these Twitter feeds, I can't remember which, if it was Peck or Yang, but they have this little cartoon up in their Twitter feed that says, in order to follow the virtue of tolerance, and by the way, tolerance is not a virtue, that in order to follow the virtue,
it depends on where you get your virtues from. Now, in another video, this guy goes on about you have to have objective views of virtue, and unless you're coming from a theological value, you're never going to be able to sell that, because everything, unless you have a theological value, everything is subjective.
Well, also to go back to the thing he said right before that, where he was talking about, you know, the mass blocking and stuff like that. Again, I'm going to point out once again, the cloistering problem on social media is epidemic. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many groups of friends are constantly shocked when they come onto my Facebook feed or when they come onto my Twitter feed or whatever. You remember this 2 years ago, Thomas, in 24 hours, in a 24-hour period on the same day, I was accused by one guy of being a, quote, gutless libtard, and I was accused by another guy of being a right-wing racist.
Yeah,
the same day. And the only reason that happens to me is that I don't cloister. But the behavior, the dominant behavior right now is only talk to people that think like me, regardless of what side you're on. So if this guy is saying that it's only progressives that do that, then I got news for him, because guess what? I'm still in the middle of both groups, and they're both doing it in droves. Side of this argument is not guiltless of that tactic, is what I'm saying.
Correct. Also, can you give me just a moment here? I need to step out and make a real quick call. I'll be right back. If you want to go ahead and interact with the chat, feel free to.
Okay.
I accidentally double ordered a pizza.
Oh yeah, that would be an issue, wouldn't it? Yeah. So yeah, I was really taken by, as I was saying earlier, I was really taken by the what do you call it? The main character, because Superman gives her a piece of, or Superman gives her his cape, and about 1/3 of the way into the book, like at the beginning or end of Act 1, and so it's funny because when I was in college, I ended up having a shirt made just like it. Her mother takes the cape, makes it into a shirt with the yellow S on the back. And so then she puts that shirt on, and then she goes to the movies with her friends. And it was very strange to read, because I'd never seen that shirt anywhere but the one I had made back when I was in college. And then she's sitting there in the movie theater watching like a Flash Gordon type serial. She's analyzing it, and all of her friends think she's odd because she's not saying anything during the movie, and she's watching and she's analyzing how they did the special effects and all that kind of stuff. And if you talk to my family, that's the way I acted when I was a kid. Like, I was very quiet during the movie. I would intensely watch the film and try and figure out, you know, what was going on, and how they made the films and all that kind of stuff. So it was weird to me to see myself reflected so accurately in a comic book character. Yeah, it's so weird, but it was very well written, and it was very engaging. But I guess you have to be a Superman fan to really appreciate that kind of thing, or maybe it's just me because it was so specific. I see some people in the chat right now asking, "Is this an SJW channel?" I don't really know how to answer that, because it's not my channel. I would defer to Thomas on that. I am not, and don't consider myself to be such a thing. But if you guys want to just find a reason to be grumpy, go ahead. But no, that's not me. As I just said, Scareglow earlier, in 24 hours 2 years ago, two people on Twitter came after me in the same 24-hour period, and one called me a gutless libtard, and the other one called me a right-wing racist. And John Caulfield says it best. Thomas's fists are rated E for everyone. I'm the same way. I don't run a political channel, and right now I'm on this chat with him right now to analyze this one person's video through the lens of this comic book, and this comic book is good. I mean, it's and I'm not somebody that like blindly likes all kinds of stuff. I did not like the new Star Wars trilogy. I did not like Man of Steel. I just take things as they come, and this right here, this comic book was very entertaining, and it was very true to a kind of 1946 Superman. I mean, some of the things in it. Yes, thank you, Evie. It's a media review. Some of the things in it are a little quirky and anachronistic. Like, I think at one point the little girl Roberta says something like Superman's as strong as all get out. And I was kind of like, I don't recall if they actually said all get out back in the 40s. And you're asking me what was the least enjoyable Superman comic story. It's hard for me to say, because I have read straight through 30 plus years of Superman stories, not including the Golden Age stuff. Like I collected Superman from 1987 all the way to 2007, all 4 titles, all the specials unbroken. And then I jumped ship because Superman stories were repeating themselves every 18 months after that. And then they did the New 52 thing, which I wasn't thrilled with. And so it was a good time to jump ship. But the least favorite stories of Superman that I've read are probably the ones that happen right around the time in the late 90s when they split him into like 2 beings. Like they split him into the red and the blue. And then there was the Millennial Giants, or sorry, not Millennial, Millennium Giants. That was before we had the phrase millennials. But yeah, it's exactly, Michael. That was around the time that I lost interest. So I have to say that would be, for me, the worst story is Superman Red and Blue. Similarly, the Spider-Man clone thing, which happened around the same time, got me out of Spider-Man for the same reason.
We don't talk about the clone saga.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
Yeah, sorry about that. I couldn't get a hold of them, so I guess I get double pizza. Awesome. So let's go ahead and get back to tax here.
Okay.
Hit and play.
Virtue of tolerance, you need to be intolerant towards some people. And by the way, quick aside, I'm sure this will not shock anybody. I think tolerance is a bunch of horse manure. I think people need to be heroic.
Real quick, a couple things. His value is tolerance isn't a virtue. Again, that goes back to who you get your virtues from. Because I'm a Christian, long-suffering and tolerance are synonymous. We're called to be long-suffering. And you shouldn't be tolerant, you should be heroic. Well, that requires you to be intolerant of certain things, my dude. Like,
yeah,
somebody comes into your house to try to harm your family, you are intolerant of their action and you put them down. What type of gibberish are you trying to sell people here?
Well, what define heroic? Because if tolerance is now on a sliding scale, then heroism and how heroism is defined can very much be on a sliding scale. One person's judgment of heroism could be, oh, cool, you killed the bad guy. Another person could say killing anybody is horribly unheroic, and you have to find other ways out of a conflict. And again, I'm a historian of World War II and medieval history and all that kind of stuff. So I look at things in the context of the time in which they happened and in which, they were written and things like that. But heroism is just as nebulous and personal a concept sometimes as tolerance can be. I feel like he's on a really muddy hill here.
And also, real quick, yes, chat. My name is Thomas. Thomas Guerra. You have to roll the R's. No, my real name is not Lio Convoy, just like Michael's real name isn't RetroBlasting. I shouldn't have had to say that, but yeah, let's go ahead and continue on.
People need to be virtuous. You need to be prudent. You need to be just. You need to be courageous. You need to be temperate. And all of those real virtues need to be under the greater virtues of things like charity. So be...
A lot of that sounds very biblical, and you're not holding up to biblical values. Please get better at what you do.
Be heroic, and that way you don't have to worry about this conundrum of being tolerant by being intolerant. So you have this mindset that in order to be tolerant, you have to be intolerant of some people. And when I go to Greg Peck's Twitter feed, because in order to get around his block, all I got to do is take his address and put it into one of the other 2 browsers that I got open all the time. It's fairly simple. When I looked through his feed, how many tweets do you think it took until you saw this conflagration of this idea that modern day KKK members or Nazis are just people who are Republicans?
Conflagration isn't a word. If you're trying to sell yourself as some sort of intellectual scholar, maybe don't use words that aren't real.
Oh, I just nowhere in this book. I know that, again, like you said, he's trying to do this sort of thing where, oh no, it's all between the lines, it's between the panels, but it's like nowhere in this book do they deal with any contemporary political thing. And I'm not trying to be naive. I know that I've read a lot of media. I've been a journalist, and I've also been to film school, and I've been out in Hollywood, and I've learned all the stuff about subtext and everything like that. And I've experienced it. My point in saying all this is you just look at the image that's on the screen right now. And after everything he's just said in the first 7.5 minutes of this video, I'm looking at this image of Superman punching this Nazi guy, and I'm going, okay, you say you're against tolerance and you want people who are acting heroic. What about this image is not heroic?
It doesn't.
What about this?
It doesn't do the sensibilities. That's all it comes down to. It's agree with me and my values that I'm not even going to do a line or tell you here. Real quick, I have to say this. Riddle of Lightning says, conflagration is a word. It's a warlock spell that consumes an immolation debuff to do instant fire damage. Doggone you nerds and your nerd thing.
I think I have like a -50 modifier to any flame resistance rolls, so I'm just going to stay out of that one. I was never good at the role playing thing.
It's all right. I've been told that whenever I enter a room, people automatically have to declare dodge on me. So yeah, this dude, he goes on about it. And remember, he's not even talking about the book at this point. He's talking about some dude that the writer on Twitter follows. And
yeah, he hasn't gotten to the book at all. It's like, are we going to talk about the book?
We will. Don't worry. Let's continue. Let's find out.
Well, it took 2 tweets. I just went to the second tweet that was on his page when I got there. And right there it is. And I went through his feed, and I could find several other of these things. So I would say the entire point of this book is to try and get this idea that modern Republicans and anybody, whether you be Republican or Democrat or anybody who has within their head that immigration should be a controlled thing, which, by the way, Democrats believed right up until Donald Trump won the election, anybody who believes that is either a member of the KKK or is a Nazi. Now, let's get into this article itself. And I'll give you the blurb at the first of this article just to give you an introduction. But as usual, what I'm going to do is go backwards through this article, because this is the way these progressive people present an argument. They present it in a way that is appeal to emotion. So they build up emotion until they actually make their point at the end. And if you want to understand what they're trying to do, what their end goal is, first you got to start at the end of the article and then move your way backwards.
That's not how logic works. Also, hate to tell you this, buddy, even if we break it down to sheer numbers, every value has some sort of emotional basis in it. You cannot argue something without some form of emotion in it. Even if you try to say you're arguing logically, there's still emotional value put into that. Even if it's just the emotional value that you value logic over emotion, that's still an emotional value.
I'm the type of person who doesn't like generalizations of any kind, and my friends, including yourself, you've known me long enough, will tell you that just as much as I don't like a whole group of people being labeled as, libtard socialists. I also don't like it when, somebody finds out that somebody pulled the lever for the Republican Party and they're like fascist, because you don't know that person. You don't know what they're personally about. Like that's dangerous and that builds resentment and all this kind of stuff. And what I'm hearing from this guy right now is that he feels like he's being labeled by this book
that hasn't come out yet by the time of this video.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like I'm already getting the sense that he feels like he's now speaking for everybody, which is a dangerous thing to do. Like, don't speak for everybody else in your political circle. Like the Republican Party is 50% of America. All right. That's a lot of people with a lot of different ideas about how things work. So he doesn't need to be speaking in these gross generalities.
Also,
I'm saying, like, yeah.
Go ahead.
Just saying that it's a very unstable foundation to build your argument on. Because there are Republican friends of mine that would read this book and not read into it the way this guy's reading into it. I mean, they would see it as throwback entertainment, and they would be like, "Oh, wow, yeah, it's like classic Superman." I don't know.
All right, real quick, I want to address Scareglow. Which is a bigger threat, Nazis or Marxists? I'll put it to you this way. You can have a grizzly bear and a rattlesnake in front of me. They're both different types of threats, but they're both threats, and I don't want to have to deal with them if I don't have to. I personally have met people who genuinely, unironically ascribe to Nazi ideology, and I've met people that are bona fide tankies. I don't really care for either ideology. Both can easily get these hands that are rated E's for everyone. This isn't a dichotomy of either or. This isn't a dichotomy at all. What we're going on over here is this dude losing his mind politically over a Superman comic book that is adapting something from 1946.
Yeah, and that's another thing, to address Scareglow's comment. It's like, the whole time that this comic was written in wasn't about, we had just defeated the Nazis and we turned around and immediately started protecting the world from the Red Menace. And so it's like, why, as Thomas said, why has it become either or now all of a sudden? Why do you have to pick one over another? There is a third option. The third option is to be part of American society and not absorb or assimilate one side or the other in Nazi versus communist or whatever. We were the third option and we were the winner. So why are we all of a sudden couching all these arguments in, better red than Dem or better, all these t-shirts I've seen? It's scary to me that the third option's gotten lost in the mud. I don't know.
All right.
I don't know.
Let's continue on here because we got a lot to cover and I don't want you to lose your mind quite yet.
Okay.
But the blurb at the first says this. Writer Jean Len Yang drew inspiration from a 1940s radio serial in which the superhero took on real-life bigotry. It was a story in which Superman made America a better place, in the real world as well as the fictional world of Metropolis. Throughout the summer of 1946, the Man of Steel dealt with the Clan of the Fiery Cross every day on the popular Adventures of Superman radio show, with the fictional bigots standing in for the real-world Ku Klux Klan. Using information provided by the activist Stetson Kennedy, the show reportedly revealed KKK code words and hidden details, unmasking the group for what it was for an eager audience ready to hear Superman fighting back injustice.
Real quick, I want to qualify here. The show did not reveal code words. All it did was reveal who these people actually are and what they really believe.
Right.
And it did, in fact, affect reality because, again, people listen to this like, wait a minute, what do you mean the Klan isn't some sort of, self-help group or some sort of, community grief center or community center there? What do you mean they're teaching all these horrible things? And it is. And they see, again, I listened to the radio play. I did it this week. The book is a very good adaptation, and it adds in ways that does not detract from the original or make it worse. It is genuinely one of the few times I've seen an adaptation maybe even better than the original.
Interesting.
So so far, the article had one thing wrong. Let's see where he takes this.
According to contemporaneous reports, the serial negatively impacted Klan membership and recruiting. Starting this fall, Superman is going to return to the fight with Superman Smashes the Klan, a 3-part serial by American-born Chinese author and MacArthur Fellowship recipient Jean Len Yang, and Gu Rai Hairu, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly, that adapts and updates the famous radio storyline for a contemporary comic book audience. Now, contained within this little blurb is all of the logical fallacies that you're going to see within the rest of the article. First of all, they're talking about this old Superman radio show. And yes, it was built upon the information from this Kennedy guy who infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan, and he used some of that in order to make this show. But within the radio show itself, Superman doesn't actually fight the Ku Klux Klan. He fights the Klan of the Fiery Cross. And so you have this conflagration of these two ideas right off the bat, because this new series, Superman is directly fighting the Ku Klux Klan.
Were they ever called the Ku Klux Klan, Michael, in the book?
Yeah. Oh, it's called the Clan of the Fiery Cross.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I laughed at that. I laughed at that because I was like, oh, this is probably one of those weird legal things where it's possible that the KKK has copyrighted their name so that they can litigate against people using it in media. That I have no proof of that. But what I'm saying is when I saw that, I was like, it's got to be the only reason that they would have backed away from using the real name. Oh, it's got to be something like that. I kind of laughed when I saw that.
It's just, yeah. So he's making a point. Well, they're calling it the Ku Klux Klan. They didn't. You're wrong. And he never does a retraction. Let's go ahead.
They don't put any little DC spin on it and give it its own name. No, it's the Ku Klux Klan.
Did they need to with Hitler?
No,
they didn't. So why is he now demanding everything has to have a fictional XP to it? No, it doesn't.
But they gloss over that little bit.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, why does he feel like it has to have a fictional thing over it? I mean, the only thing I can think of, like I said again, is that the reason that they didn't use the name is because I bet you that name is in some kind of, they copyrighted it or something to litigate using their American civil rights and whatever, as repugnant as it sounds, to protect their name from being used in media.
Yeah. I don't really know. I'd have to look into that. I think it's more...
Me too.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and continue.
Bit of information. And then they talk about the author, who is an American-born Chinese author. Well, here you have your beginning of your appeal to emotion and what the entire thing goes through at the first for its appeal to emotion. You have this author, and yes, he does have some unique perspectives as being a person who is both Chinese and American, and he talks about, I had 2 names when I was a kid, an American name and a Chinese name, one when I was in China, one when I was in America, and all of these kinds of ideas. And he ties them into Superman being an illegal immigrant into the United States. And it starts off with this fairly simple premise that, all immigrants feel different, especially these ones who are illegal immigrants like Superman.
That argument was never made once in the book.
No, the entire book doesn't mention illegal immigration, at least from what I recall.
No, it doesn't mention immigration outside of their Chinese immigrants. And the book, in so much as Tommy and Roberta and Superman, it's about coming to terms with your heritage and internalizing it in a healthy way without sacrificing who you are as a person.
Yeah, there's actually that, and that's actually a double-sided thing in the book. In other words, it's mirrored in all sides of the conflict. So, the little boy Chuck is having to come to terms with the fact his uncle is a member of this group, this clan. Meanwhile, Roberta's family is having to come to terms with the fact that they shouldn't have to give themselves, double names. And Roberta is struggling with that dual identity of I'm Chinese American, but I have 2 languages in the house and I have 2 names. And by the end of it, it's Lois who helps her, reconcile that. And then Chuck, of course, Superman helps Chuck and Roberta and Superman help Chuck figure that out as well. And what I'm saying is that theme is not limited to the Chinese characters in the story, and Superman himself is struggling with dual identity in the story. So there's 3 different subplots going on that all mirror that theme. I'm going to be quiet now.
It's all right. I want to go ahead and address Scareglow in the chat. Let me be very clear here, since you seem to be wanting to dance around it. Scareglow, your life values, your experiences are not uniform for everybody else's. I also live in the South. You would say, who has ever met a KK member or seen a Klan rally? Because you have not seen them does not mean they are not there. I went to a church that tried to espouse at one point a form of Klan theology. I have met actual people who identify and espouse the rhetoric of Nazis and neo-Nazis. This idea that they clearly don't exist in any capacity, otherwise I would have seen them, lay off it, knock it off, or you can find somewhere else to be.
Just to give you a direct example, I was born in Tennessee, and I currently reside in Georgia. The majority of my life. There's only been a few years where I didn't live in these two states. One 3-year stint or 3.5-year stint in the UK in London, and then another 2-year stint, 4 years in Syracuse and 2 years in LA. While I was a kid in Tennessee, I had to go to a school for a while right before we left for England. And that school was for me an academic break. They wanted to give me a break. I won't go into the details. But there were kids there that had some issues. Some of them were learning disabilities, things like that. But one kid's name was Richard. And during he was emotionally unstable. He had a lot of behavioral problems. And he came from a family that we had heard had a lot of issues with this kind of thing. In other words, the dad was a little too close to this kind of stuff. And I was a direct witness because he was in my core class every day, all 6 classes a day, or whatever it was. And one day, Richard, in the midst of, I don't even remember what the discussion was about in class, jumped up on his desk, stood up, pointed at the girl. There was one girl in our class that was Jewish. And he pointed at her and he screamed at the top of his lungs. And this was middle school, by the way. This wasn't high school. This was like 6th grade. And he pointed right at her and he said, "Hitler should have wiped out all of you." And my point in saying that is, this stuff is still going on. It might be buried. But it's not a myth. It's not fiction. And we have to be objective about this stuff. That means also acknowledging that it's still around. And I was a direct witness to that at the age of 12.
Yep, I witnessed quite a bit of it as well because I'm Hispanic, believe it or not. Right. So let's go ahead and continue down this nonsense video.
And so you have to explore that. And this is the wedge in the door, the emotional wedge in there in order to open up that crack in order for them to begin to sell you this emotional argument which they get to at the end. And what is that emotional argument at the end? Well, they give it right here. This radio play negatively impacted Klan membership and recruitment when it came out in the 1940s. And what they're doing is they're updating this famous radio storyline for a contemporary comic book audience. Why? Because they want to take this idea that anyone who even suggests a hint of immigration control, well, they're the equivalent of the KKK or a Nazi, and therefore we must make sure that they are in decline by taking these ideas and making them so repugnant to a new audience today. And I really don't think there's any coincidence that this is coming out slightly before the next election. So, now having gone over that blurb at the first, let's jump to the end of the article. And here's a quote from the end of the article. The reporter asks Gene Yang this question. "You're a national ambassador for young people's literature, and comics specifically. When you're working on a project like this, especially on a character as iconic as Superman, is it something that you can see as a tool for new readers to use to get into not just Superman, not just comics, but stories about things that are happening in the real world, stories that matter?" And Yang's answer to this is the following. I actually feel rather lucky to be working in comics today. I think over the last maybe 10 to 20 years, we've seen this shift in the public perception of comics. More and more, people are open to the idea of comics dealing with serious topics, and I hope this project fits in with that. I do think that there is a growing wave of comics that want to tackle the very heart of what it means to, and then he goes off into a tangent, but comes back and says, one of the best examples of using genre to talk about very important and serious topics. I'm trying to do something similar with this Superman book.
Hey, Michael, you lived through the 80s just like I did, right?
Yeah, I did. I did. I was born in the late 70s, so by default, I lived through the 80s. Yeah.
We never had cartoons that dealt with real world issues, did we? It just never happened. I mean,
no. There was never that episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends where they learned the history of the Nazi Party. Which, by the way, is the one episode that Disney won't show on Disney Plus.
We never had them talk about real social issues. We never had He-Man and She-Ra tell us about how difficult it can be to come forward if a parent or somebody has touched you inappropriately. We've never dealt with real social issues. We've never dealt with any political. That's just a completely new invention. It's never happened before. FourthAge here says so. Never.
I never did see that. I made it up in a Mandela effect. I never saw that episode of Different Strokes where they were kidnapped by the child molester. Never saw it. Never happened.
I totally didn't have that Spider-Man comic where he talks to a kid who got molested about how he needs to come out and tell people because he also got molested as a child. That never happened. These things they retroactive did not ever. No, never happened. It's all lies. Dirty leftist agenda, propaganda, buzzword.
And apparently that 1946 Superman radio drama where he fights the Ku Klux Klan never happened.
Also, none of this happened. And all the Disney shorts where Donald Duck fought Nazis, that also didn't happen.
Right, yeah. None of it happened.
How stupid do you have to be to try to make that argument? That's just plain ignorance. Let's continue.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have Yang, and he's talking in a very subtle way, and he actually says it very directly, that he's not so much concerned about the message. He's concerned about exploring these ideas and letting other people see the exploration of these ideas. And again, this is your subtle DC way of taking this powder keg and putting it next to a raging fire. But the point of this story and why it is coming out right now is because they want to use this story for another means. Now,
citation needed, evidence required. Here's the fun thing, and because I deal with things that are very heavy, like child predation, if you make an accusation, you better have evidence to back it. He has none, and he will provide none. Even when he was going on about tweets, you didn't see a single one on the stream or on his video, and you can tell he could edit them in if he wanted to. He's not doing it. Either he's not doing it because he's lazy, he's stupid, or it's intentional to try to deceive people. I don't know which one's which, but he's been dishonest this entire stream. Good Lord. Continuing.
He says himself that he's not trying to be didactic. That is to say, he's not trying to teach people a lesson. But really, if you look at that statement that I just read, yeah, he's actually presenting a lesson to people and saying, oh, take it or leave it. But let's look at the people that he's actually presenting it to. In order to do that, let's go to the previous question that was asked. The previous question was, did you go into it with the idea that this lesson needs to be retaught? This is, after all, a project aimed at young readers. Were you thinking in terms of lessons needing to be relearned in today's culture? Well, as I said, you have Yang, and he answers the question, and he says, no, I'm not trying to teach anybody a lesson. But at the same time, right after that, he says, well, he's using these comics to delve into these bigger ideas that he wants to present to people. And who are these people that he's presenting them to? Well, as the interviewer indicates, Yang is a national ambassador for young people's literature. So he's trying to sell it to young people. And although Yang seems to be trying to hide that just a little bit in this interview, you have the interviewer, and he's not hiding that at all.
God forbid you try to get comics to kids.
Right?
Again, these are things that were sold at the Scholastic Book Fair. That was never hidden. What are you going on about, you mentally deficient goon? Let's continue.
He's saying, isn't this project aimed at young readers? Don't they need to be taught a lesson and retaught what is going on about the Ku Klux Klan and Nazis And again, Yang is very light-handed in the way that he does this, but if you go through his Twitter feed, when he's trying to sell this specific book in his Twitter feed, you come across a retweet right in the middle of that from someone else who I do believe is connected to him in this National Ambassadorship for Young People program. And she says, Superman Smashes the Klan is based on a radio program from 1946. In addition to being an important and compelling read, there are social study tie-ins galore. This is absolutely a book you will want in your classroom. And again, I have to restate that Yang retweeted this specific tweet in his feed right in the middle of him promoting this book itself. Therefore, you have him quoting probably exactly what he would say, if he had some cojones, as a national ambassador for young people's literature and comics specifically. And that is that these books should be directed not towards your comic buying public, but towards kids. Kids in the classroom. And what are kids in the classroom supposed to do? Well, they're supposed to take these comics that have social studies tie-ins galore. You'll notice social studies, not civics. Social studies
Civics and social studies, they follow two different things. That's like saying, well, notice you said gym, not health class.
This has always been one of the big struggles. This is not a new struggle. This is what is stymieing me about this guy's position, is that the whole thing about schools, throughout American history, trying to teach children to be good citizens and to be upstanding people and all that stuff. So the specific lessons have constantly come into conflict over the years, depending on what, where we are culturally with a certain group of parents or this or that. And parents groups have always gotten, one group of parents gets mad and they don't want their kid being taught X, Y, Z. And it's continued to accelerate as we've gone into the 21st century, especially with the helicopter parenting and everything like that. But my point is, it's nothing new. These conflicts between school and parenting, in terms of growing a child to be a good person or whatever it is, have always come into conflict. And I guess I don't understand why this guy's acting like this is some new thing.
Kids should know about the Klan. They should know about World War II. They should know about World War I. They should know about general American history. If your argument is kids shouldn't be taught that being a racist piece of garbage is wrong, then what are you arguing for? Real quick, gonna go ahead and throw this to Harvey Pliskin. When I say manga and anime are not apolitical, when they do infer politics, it's usually something within the culture of Japan, which is probably why you don't pick it up. Let's see here. Go ahead and continue to play this.
Tie-ins. And they're going to use these books as an example of these ideas, these KKK ideas, these ideas from the 1940s. And again, you're looking at the art in the background and you see that one of these villains that Superman is attacking has a Nazi symbol on his chest. So they're taking the idea of KKK and they're linking it right in there with Nazi. And then
because they generally have the same values. That's why.
Are going to link it, what I show you next, with immigration itself. Because previous to that, the interviewer makes this statement. There's the fact that this story is being published today. We are at a point in history now where even the discussion of immigration in America is this impossibly charged topic. It feels important at this moment to have a story, specifically to have a Superman comic that pushes back so clearly against bigotry and racism that does make the appeal for tolerance. And here's Yang's answer to that statement, and you'll have to bear with me because this is a long quote. He says, "It's not just America. You read news about Europe, India, or the Philippines. I started this project because I thought it was something that I needed to understand." And I'm going to skip ahead just a little, and he says, "Things that I've learned is that the world learned something about tolerance after World War II. Not just America. All of us learned something about tolerance. World War II was the worst nationalistic instincts of the world come to a head. The worst instincts of our species had manifested themselves pretty much everywhere in the world. And then this Superman story, which arrived a year after the war ended, was primed to convey the lesson the world had learned to a younger generation. I just think that maybe we're so far removed from that period that we're beginning to forget those lessons. That was the impression that I got. So again, here you have the author himself saying, yes, this is a lesson, and we're drifting away from that lesson. Now, he says later, I'm not trying to teach anybody a lesson, but if you look at these words and the things that he posts on his Twitter, yeah, he's trying to teach this lesson, and he's trying to teach this lesson to children. And
the monster! He should be stopped! He's telling kids don't be pieces of garbage. Amazing.
That's the funniest part, is that comic books are always, and always have been, superhero comics meaning, always, any comic book that was sold on the spinner rack from 1938 all the way through,
now.
Well, yeah, now, barring a few blips on the radar, they were always espousing, good person. Like, don't be a dick. Like, yeah.
I told you, your brain's gonna hurt by the time we're done with this, man. I don't drink, so good luck to you.
I'm not understanding his beef. Like I said, I've got a number of Republican friends, because I don't cloister myself. I don't camp up. I don't live in a bubble, and they also are the type of people who are like, yeah, don't be a dick. I don't understand where this guy's coming from.
He's coming from outrage baiting. And we'll get into that later, because I thoroughly believe this guy's an outrage baiting grifter. Because here's the thing. When you sell people on any form of hatred, it is a tedious alliance at any given point. So let me go ahead, and we only got a few minutes left. Let's try to power through this so we can go through the other video and try not to commit harakiri.
And I would say there's no mystery in why the art looks like it does, because they're trying to teach this to young children, and they want to bring these ideas into the social studies classes, that you have these old organizations like the KKK, like the Nazis, and in order for you to understand what's going on today, in order for you to understand, in their words, the bigotry that's going on all over the world today, including America, you have to be taught this idea of tolerance. You'll see that he's trying to promote these ideas to young people, especially in a classroom, not really a comic book audience, in order for them.
I'm sorry, what do you mean not
not a comic book audience? Comic books are for kids!
Well,
holy crap!
They primarily were. I'm not really so sure on that either way. But the point is, these people who are part of Comicsgate or these other regressive, stupid groups, well, we need to have more comics related for kids. But then when they get them, they get mad at them. Thank you, Jelly Bean. I tested for COVID today, so the streaming your video is great for distracting me. Thank you. Keep up the good work. I will keep you in my prayers. Jelly Bean, genuinely, I'm sorry you have to deal with that, and I'm glad I'm able to provide you some entertainment, even if it's at the loss of my own sanity.
My God. And also, his comment about the artwork, I'd just like to point out that, one, I really, really enjoyed the artwork in this comic. I've been through a lot of eras of comic book artwork, and some of the trends were truly infuriating. So his problem with this artwork, because it's clean and crisp and almost in some ways a modern, attempting to evolve in a modern way, Golden Age artwork of Siegel and Schuster, I do not understand why he has a problem with the artwork. I thought the artwork was really nice.
He's trying to. It's like somebody in the comment section said they're trying to hypnotize the children. Real quick, Riddle of Lightning says, "Silly Lio, comic books are not for kids. They're for 30-year-old man children who want to say the N-word at Subway." Doggone it. But no, like, here's the thing. I understand that the general comic art style is very realistic in style and tone and coloring, but this work is great, and it's been used on other books as well. Like, again, I mentioned it's the entire reason why I picked up Gwenpool. I had no interest in the character itself, thought it was a cheap, lazy Deadpool ripoff. Gwenpool was genuinely enjoyable, not just from a writing perspective, but art as well. But it's the art that got me interested in it. That's why old comics, the iconic comic covers, are that, because they are good, appealing art. And you have a lot of artists that don't do heavy detail work. Look at Batman Year One. That wasn't heavy in detail, but still great. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, that same thing. I was just going to say, all the Golden Age comics of these DC heroes and the Marvel heroes, like the early ones, like Captain America before he was officially Marvel, they are simpler lines so that the printing presses could actually bring that detail out. They had limits technologically back then. And this is just an evolution of that art style. It is not some sort of insidious, hypnotic thing. At least it wasn't the impression that I got.
Like, I can't imagine this dude living in the 30s and picking up the first issue of Action Comics where Superman's there and he beats the piss out of a domestic abuser. It's like, oh, he's trying to sell me an idea that men are bad. No, it's not telling you that your group is bad unless you are part of that group, you doofus.
Right. Yeah.
All right, let me see here. Let me go ahead and let's finish this.
Them to understand these ideas in history in order to link them, as this interviewer specifically does, to the idea of immigration in America today. And
again, the book never talks about immigration. The only way it's mentioned is the fact that the bad racist Klan members don't like foreigners in their neighborhoods. It's almost like they're racist or something. It's almost like no form of immigration would satisfy them because they don't like immigrants at all.
That's what I can't figure out. He talks about, DC throwing dynamite next to a burning house. He's literally throwing his own group while speaking for them next to Klan and Nazism, even though, like I said, I have many, many Republican friends who would beat this guy up in an alley for doing that, because they would be the first ones to say, we have nothing to do with this. We do not see ourselves in anywhere near this, nor would we posit the argument that Superman beating up, a Nazi and the Ku Klux Klan is tantamount to beating us up. Are you nuts?
What was it? And it's not related to the Klan membership or racism, but I saw this comic years ago of a left-wing guy and a right-wing guy arguing, and in the middle of them comes this dude's like, can we actually talk about how children can consent to sexual touch and whatnot? And they just both look at each other, and then immediately the comic cuts to both of them beating him in an alleyway.
Right, yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and continue.
And very briefly, if you go back into the previous part of the interview, what they do is they mix up the idea of legal immigration with illegal immigration. No, and they make it sound like it's the exact same thing, which it is not, because Yang talks about his experience and his family's experience as immigrants. But he's talking about their family experience as legal immigrants. And then he configurates that idea, he mixes it all up with the idea of illegal immigration, which he uses the example of Superman as an illegal immigrant. And that leads right into what we have here. Talk about immigration and how these old ideas, these old institutions, like the KKK, like the Nazis, they were an example of...
I'm sorry, I have to comment on Autobot Starscream, but real quick here, can we get the link to that comic, Lio? I would recommend just Googling Read Superman Smashes the Klan. This is the Fourth Age we're covering, Pale Knight. Autobot Starscream says, as a Republican, I believe in bombing the Klan and taking their oil.
Oh, wow.
Doggone it, Starscream.
Right. He is Starscream, by the way. I mean...
All right, continuing.
Nationalism, not going to concentrate on their socialist origins whatsoever of the National Socialist or the socialist eugenic origins of the KKK. No, you're not going to go there. No, you have to link it to nationalism, which, by the way, every country in history was a nation and defended itself as a nation. So that's so broad a statement that they're making that it's pretty much irrelevant.
You're making a straw man. Nobody's made this argument. You're trying your best to debunk something that was never claimed because you don't have an argument.
But no, you have to blame all of these things on nationalism. You have to blame all these things upon people who want control of immigration. And again, you do that by sticking that emotional wedge in there of confusing the idea of legal immigrants with illegal immigrants, who are people that their first act in your country is to break the law of that country in order to get into your country. You got to mix up all of those ideas, and you got to stick them into a comic book, and you got to get the comic book into classrooms, and then you have to bring it into the discussion of social studies, and you have to take these historical ideas that people are no longer familiar with, and you have to teach these children that these people in history are the exact same as the people today. Anybody who feels patriotic, anybody who feels that they need to defend their nation, anybody who feels that a border is actually a good thing.
Just want to go ahead and say here.
It's literally, Superman is literally defending his nation.
Yes. Also, if you actually listen to the original radio play too, they flat out several times call the Klan and the Fiery Cross un-American bigots.
Right.
They point out that their ideology is un-American by nature. And Superman espouses the iconic American ideology. One, unfortunately, we have not completely lived up to at any point in history, but that's the entire point of being an icon. It's something you're supposed to strive for. I'm sorry. This guy,
but
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to just go on another tantrum, but go ahead.
I was just going to say that is another endemic problem right now amongst all comic readers of a lot of, it's a more of a generational thing than a political thing, where they don't want aspirational heroes. They have rejected them, and the industry has rejected them. And instead they constantly have jaded heroes that don't challenge the reader at all, that send the message, you were born just fine and all of your flaws are benefits, and you not being a good person makes you a good person. You don't even need to try. And it's like, that is a terrible message to send out to anybody of any political bend anywhere. And it's a bad message to send to kids. And I don't know why the comic readership, and in some ways this was why this was so shocking, was because this didn't do that. I was waiting for Man of Steel stuff to happen, and it didn't. So
all right, so let's go ahead and power through the last 42 seconds. Then I'm going to read something off, and we'll move to the next video.
And how do they do that? What is the best way that they can do that? Well, they do it by taking, as they say, the icon of Superman, the icon of truth, justice, and the American way. And they use this icon to sell to young children in the classroom the idea that, moving forward, if you want to defend your nation, that makes you a bigot. Anyway, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit...
You didn't, and more importantly, that's not what it said. But let me go ahead. Here's what I said to this clown in this comment section. I said, it's funny listening to you talk about logical fallacies when your entire video is based on ad hoc propter hoc, as well as arguing from ignorance. You talk about how DC used a fictional take on the Klan to attack them in the 40s, decrying them not doing so now while failing to recognize why they did that. If your argument is the Klan isn't relevant in modern day, then you better stop reading fantasy or historical fiction. And I better see you making videos getting mad at Superman stopping bank robbers as well, considering how rare that is now. If your argument is based on concerns over propaganda, then you're basing it on both the argument and ignorance, as the book hasn't come out yet, and guilt by association. He follows X person on Twitter, therefore they must agree and act the same on all things. If that's the case, then I guess we can assume that you agree that child molestation depends on the child, since you have Sargon in your comics here unopposed by you. In fact, he's the only one of your fans that you've even responded to. And I said, you're intellectually irresponsible and an obvious sophist. You want to test your mettle? Hit me up at, and that was my old Twitter handle. Doubt you will, though. People like you prefer your echo chambers, and the art's reminiscent of Superman TAS. Any of you bumping your gums against it are making yourselves look stupid. So here's his response to me. Great comment. I thought about responding here, and I still might, but I might just make a video to answer these points instead. He didn't. I'll let you know if I do, or get back to you. Also, my email is in the description. And that was a year ago, and a dude came up afterwards, said 3 months since this has happened, and you didn't have a backbone to say something that can go against what this dude said. You're the exact definition of straw man arguments. That's somebody tearing into this guy. So, no, he's not interested in an intellectual discussion. He's not interested in looking at things rationally, true rationale. He's interested in what he can sell you because he's making his own comic and he wants you to buy it. And he's going to tell you he's going to sell it because it's not going to have politics in it. It's going to have all the things I say, and it's going to be garbage. I'll put it this way. Richard Meyer's book, Jawbreakers. There we go. Jawbreakers. It's so bad nobody's pirated it.
Right.
That's how bad these people's books are. But let me go ahead and get this other one up and ready.
Hey, how you doing?
Make sure this is the right thing.
Of people in my comments saying that I am a defender of...
All right, this is the right one. All right, so...
Okay.
All right, take a breather. Let me take a look at the chat. Try not to lose my mind. You don't have to apologize for your profanity, Michael. It's a free country. Also, I never said I emailed him, Amnesia. He said that I could email him, but he saw my comment, so it doesn't matter. He never responded to the comment properly. He just sat it out there for a year. He knew full well what I was saying. He heard my argument. He didn't care. Because he's dishonest. Intellectually, if nothing else. I wouldn't say any of them are good, Starscream, but we'll talk about that later. Let's go ahead and get into this.
Hey, how you doing? This is RJ.
I'm going to pass forward past the parts we already heard.
Because I saw the possibility of this book going sideways. And in particular, they started to attack my logic and my reasoning, not taking into account the entire premise was I didn't have the book in front of me, so I was talking about the possibility of what it was going to look like.
And you were wrong on all counts, and you do not once walk them back. But let's continue.
And possibility is an actual logical category. You have universal, you have particular, you have possible, you have impossible. So I want to go over this book and look at exactly what it is. And as always, I'd like to take a couple of steps backward and look at the big picture of what this book is trying to say. So to begin with, let's look at who the audience of this book is supposed to be. Now, if we look at the cover of the book, it says it's for teens. But when we look at the advertising that DC put into this book and put it up on DC Kids and a whole bunch of things around that, we'll notice that it's probably for children that are younger than teens.
It's DC Kids. Kids is an all-encompassing age group up until, I believe, 18 by DC standards. What are you even on about, you nitwit?
Also, we have the writer of this book being Gene Yang, and Gene Yang was brought into DC for a very specific purpose. Well, first of all, he was brought in because in current day, you have to have an Asian writer to write other Asian characters, otherwise you're being racist.
Or it's just a really good idea to have somebody who's experienced the things mentioned in this book writing about it, if he's a good writer. And here's what I really hate about these idiots who make these arguments. Well, if he's a good writer, it shouldn't matter. Well, then why don't you apply that to somebody who's of a specific race writing for somebody of a specific race? Should it matter if the person's good at writing? Well, of course, the argument falls apart there because they don't want to admit that tears apart their argument.
Right.
I've heard about EVS and Cyberfrog. Let me know, Harvey, if it ever comes out. Continue.
You know, putting them in that little pen of you can only write Asian people. Yeah, that's not racist at all. But anyway, he was a school teacher. This is what he was. And so I do believe that DC brought him in because they were trying to grab onto, in part, they were trying to grab onto this younger audience, and he had some experience as a teacher with this younger type of audience. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But he is used to writing for kids. That is his main target audience. Furthermore, we have Gene Young saying himself that the reason why DC and he as part of this project chose to have the type of art that they have in this book, which is labeled as being very cartoony, he wanted a combination look of something you would see in a manga and your traditional looking Superman. But when he says your traditional looking Superman, it appears that he is talking more about the Superman cartoon rather than the Superman comics, because if you look at the art in the background that I'm showing you of this comic, you will see that it looks very much like the Superman cartoon. And the costume design seems to be more in line with what you got in that early cartoon of Superman. So you have all these things pointing towards the fact that this book is for kids. And as I said, it says right on the cover that this is for teens. But I would say if a teen looked at this kind of cartoonish art in a comic book, they would probably not pick it up.
Based on what? Where's your
No.
pictures? Where's your... You're my age, if not older. What are you going on about? You have no clue what teenagers like. I barely even know what teenagers like, and I talk to them pretty regularly. This is going to appeal to whomever it appeals to. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also this numpty needs to realize that this artwork if it is derived from the 1990s animated series, that artwork was derived from the Max Fleischer cartoons, which was derived from the original Siegel and Schuster artwork. So this artwork, 4 generations forward, is the natural evolution of the original Golden Age comic book art. Unlike a lot of the more traditionally realistic stuff that we were getting, not that it's bad, but like Kurt Swan and all those legends, they had really come forward with their artwork in a way that was shepherded by modern printing technology. Whereas this, once again, harkens back to a time when that wasn't possible. It's just cleaner without pulpy stuff in the panels.
Hold on. Dealing with another goon in chat. All right, so here's another kicker. I know a specific teenager who literally just started delving into and has become infatuated with Batman Beyond, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, and he is enthralled with it. So I know at least one teenager who retroactively is looking at this stuff and enjoying it, so you don't have an argument there.
This would be the reason why they would not pick it up, in my estimation. They would look at it and say, that's a little too childish for me. I'm not going to pick that up. So I would say that the target audience for this book is actually much younger. And that would be in line with the usual rule of thumb for writing YA material. The rule of thumb for YA material is that you should have a main character who is typically 2 to 3 years older than the people you want to read the book.
Yeah, the main character in this is the little girl for the most part. So, yeah. Way to go, buddy.
So if you want 13-year-olds to read your book, then you write a main character who is a 15-year-old. And the main character in these books is not Superman. The main character is a little Chinese girl, Chinese-American girl, and her brother. The little girl, I do believe, is about 10 years old, and the little boy is about 12 years old. So if you use that rule of thumb, you would see that the target audience for this book would probably be kids between the age of 8 and 10 years old.
Real quick, Michael, did I ever tell you what my very first Spider-Man comic was that I read?
Oh.
It was the Kraven's Last Hunt Saga Part 4. Keep in mind I was about 8, 9 years old. It was the issue where Kraven confronts Spider-Man after he buried him alive and took his place.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You said this on a live stream, but go ahead.
Yeah, and then he at the end of the comic, Kraven puts a gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger. So,
right.
If you to appeal to kids, you have to do X, Y, Z thing. Dude, like, kids will read whatever is given to them so long as it's age appropriate. And I'm not even necessarily saying that wasn't, because it was wild. But like, but like, I was a kid, I read Batman, who's an adult in his mid 30s. I read a little bit of Punisher, who was an adult in his mid 40s, who was, whoo boy, a little bit more intense. But like, they don't care how old the protagonist is so long as it's entertaining to them.
Yes, exactly. I watched the Baroness as a child in the G.I. Joe comic book shoot Scarlet in the head at point blank range. That book was still targeted towards, like, 8 to 12-year-olds or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. It was not considered an adult book. I don't get it.
All right, continuing.
But that leads into something else that I really want to focus on, because I'm going to assume for this video that A, DC is not stupid, B, that Gene Yang is not stupid either, and that when he gives an interview, he's actually telling the truth. So if you look at the cover of...
You called him a liar in the last live stream, saying that he was avoiding questions and that this is some sort of conspiracy. Make up your mind.
Lasai.
Didn't Serpentor get shot in the head too? Yes, that's why you wear a proper helmet, not one that has a goofy snake mask around the top and bottom of your face.
Yeah. This I command.
I miss that character's voice actor. He passed away years ago. Continuing.
Of this book, once again, look at the price of this book. It is $10 for this book, and this is one of 3. Now, you're getting about 60 pages worth of story. The other 5 pages, 6 pages is this bizarre mix of a progressive view of...
Actually, I'm looking again. I did this when I did my review. It's like $7.99. I don't know why that cover says $10.99, but either or, like, he's gonna argue that kids wouldn't spend this type of money. Dude, I raked some dude. I resodded and worked on some person's lawn, which that's another story altogether, because that was a very unique person whose contributions to existence I dearly miss. But I did that for the entirety of a summer to buy my very first Beast Wars Transformer figure, Magnaboss. That was $20 at the time. Don't tell me kids won't do X. You just didn't do X, you lazy dog. But continue.
Well, especially when action figures now are $14.99 and up. Give me a break.
Continuing.
Slavery and oppression, along with Greg Jung, again, talking about his childhood, talking about when he was in grade school and in middle school. So that points to the fact that he's trying to connect with people who are of that age group. So the question becomes, how many little kids between the ages of, say, 8 and 10, we'll even push it to be about 11 or 12, how many of those kids are going to spend $10 on a Superman comic?
It depends on if the Scholastic Book Fair is around, because when you walk in there, you rolling in like a big boy with the big money, because that's what you're there for.
Yep.
Dude, I remember when I was doing milk delivery, and I went to a school that it was a little Christian school, a little church school, and they had the Scholastic Book Fair there, right? And at that point I was 28, 29.
Yeah.
I didn't leave there without buying something.
I remember, yeah. I remember. Do you know the comic book Mouse?
Yeah, Mouse. With this allusion to World War II. Yeah.
Yeah, I bought that at the Scholastic Book Fair as like an 11-year-old, and I mean, this guy thinks that Superman smashes the Klan is some kind of traumatic piece of social engineering or whatever. This guy's clearly never read Mouse, and I don't mean that Mouse is social engineering. I mean this guy is a lightweight when it comes. If I'm 11 years old, and I'm reading Mouse. This guy's complaining about Superman smashes the Klan in his 40s. Give me a break.
God forbid he ever read anything Alan Moore wrote or Grant Morrison. That's whoo. I remember people were in Midnight's Edge Facebook group, and apparently in Professor Geeks they were raging. Ooh, look, this man, this Grant Morrison, he came out as gender non-binary. I was trying to tick away check boxes. I'm like, if you know anything about Grant Morrison, that is the most sane thing that man has ever said. This dude literally believed he was taken into a spacecraft and given the power to heal cancer only in cats by Jesus Christ. These people don't know the industry. They don't know what they're talking about. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, that's the internet for you. Like most internet critics that I've seen on either side of this spectrum, when they just start going off about something, they just don't, half the time they don't consider like how movies are made or how comic books are written or all that kind of stuff. And they make these sweeping generalizations. Yeah.
Real quick, Badre Bali, thank you very much. To help you support your argument, in the top 10 direct market graphic novel charts for second quarter 2020, number 5 in units sold and number $10 in voice. So the book did well. Yeah, I figured it would. It's got 3 volumes. All right, continuing on.
I can't see any kid spending $10, let alone the $30 that it's going to cost for all 3 of these to get the entire story. I can't see that happening. But as I said, let's proceed upon the assumption that DC is not stupid. So,
well, real quick, I was an adult, and I've got like 3 of the 5 trade paperback collections of the Clone Saga just because I wanted to go a reread to see if it was bad as I remember it was. So saying kids wouldn't buy this type of stuff, I think you're kind of wrong, man.
Dude, when we were kids in the late 80s, we were saving our money to get the first comics trade paperbacks of the original Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtles volumes. And we ended up buying all 4 between my brother and I's money. And that wasn't cheap. I mean, but we wanted the original OG Ninja Turtles to read. And a kid will buy what interests them in the comic book world. They will.
Or just in general. But let's go ahead and continue.
If the target audience for this book is indeed people as young as 8 up to about 11 or 12, and these kids cannot actually afford or would not actually want to spend that much money on a book, then why and how is DC planning to get these books into the hands of that audience? Well, in order to answer that question, we have to go back and look at the writer again, who is Gene Yang. Now, Gene Yang, in my estimation, was specifically chosen because of his experience within the school system, because he's always talking about getting books into the hands of school children. Within the TED Talk that he did,
The monster!
He specifically talks about this. He wants to get graphic novels into the hands of school children. He pushes for that. Also, on a...
Where was this guy when you were a kid trying to get that Ninja Turtle graphic novel?
No, right?
It's like, yes, give me that. I want that.
I know. I don't care how much money it costs. I will give up every box of Lucky Charms between now and the end of the year to get that book. Yeah.
All right, let's continue.
Social media, he is very supportive of the people who are saying the exact same thing, that they want to take Superman Smashes the Klan and get it into their classroom. When he goes out and talks about this book, where does he go? Well, he goes to libraries. He does go to bookstores as well, but he's going to a lot of libraries. I don't know how many of these libraries are in actual schools. They may indeed be, but he goes to libraries to try and sell this book. This is the venue where he goes and talks about this book and the other books that he has written. On top of that, he was granted the title of the Library of Congress's National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. So you put all that together, and what do you get? Well, you get the fact that DC is targeting this very young audience, and the way that they're going to get this book into the hands of that very young audience is if schools and libraries buy this book as a trade paperback and put it on their shelves, or put it into the hands of kids. This is specifically how DC intends to get this book out there and into the hands of kids.
You guys from Comicsgate constantly complain about kids not buying comics. You had an entire movement called Move the Needle. And now you're complaining that they're trying to get... Oh, I'm sorry. It's the type of comic. That's what I'm missing. Okay.
You know, kids are reading 02. And I'm just saying, I'm just putting that out there as like a comparative.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how plugged in this guy is to...
He's not.
What kids are reading these days and their anime, fascination, which is a good thing. But yeah, kids are reading 02 and things like that, which border on, hentai at times. And he's complaining about Superman Smashes the Klan. I'm still trying to figure out why this is the hill he's decided to die on.
I don't know, but man, he has really decided. Wait till you get... I told you, man, you're going to be amazed about some of the things he says. So let's continue.
And I would say this is extremely important because it is showing the fact that they are trying to take this book and put it into an educational setting. Because if I get into the book itself and I look at the book and the story, what I see there is an argument. They are trying to use this book to put forth an argument.
Real quick, I have to say this. I have to, but if I was DC and I'm looking all right, so if I want to help educate kids, I can use one of two characters, or one of three. I can use the Amazon that uses lethal force, who, if written incorrectly, can be an outright misandrist. I can use the scary billionaire that beats on people because he is very, very angry and can horrify anybody if he needs to. Or I can choose the American icon that everybody calls a Boy Scout. Guess which one I'm going with? I'm going with Superman. And that's from a hardcore Batman fan. I love Batman. Right. I wouldn't use him to try to teach social values like this. Because
exactly.
Batman's ways of teaching social values is... if you do something bad, I'm going to break something that you will feel in your bones for every storm for the rest of your life.
I'm loving. I just gotta point out, I'm loving this comment from Harvey Pliskin. He says, "Damn, I never thought I'd ever hear Michael French say the word hentai."
You heard it here first. Excelsior. Let's continue.
They're trying to educate people, and that flows exactly with your progressive ideology. They don't believe, really, that there is such a thing as good and evil. They don't believe that...
I'm sorry, what? Progressives don't believe in good and evil? What do they call Nazis, then? Do they call them whatever not evil is? You're not evil. Just... Where is he getting this?
I don't know. It's almost like a self-reinforcing delusion of some kind that's limited to his specific argument.
Brain machine broke.
Yeah.
All right, continue.
That people's choices really can be good or evil. They simply believe that the people who don't accept progressivism are ignorant.
So it depends on what your value for progressivism is, but I'd rather somebody assume that if I'm on the wrong side of something, like, and I have been before in terms of different values here, or been hard-headed about other things, had a similar situation happen today with Coyote Lovely. I would hope that instead of assuming I'm some evil monster, they would try to reason with me and talk to me about it and try to help me understand why I need to adjust XYZ thing. What's your problem here? Continuing.
This is part and parcel of the whole, quote-unquote, progressive ideology, that people who don't accept what they say are ignorant and need to be educated. So what this book is, it is an argument. It is a way of educating its audience. Now, as I'm always saying, any story really is an argument. It is a rhetorical argument, but it's a rhetorical argument that's trying to convince you of things in the story internally, trying to convince you that this is a good representation of reality, or that because your characters are such and such of such and such a mindset, and they talk in this way, then they are of X mentality, and therefore character development will proceed upon this. So all of those arguments are done within the book itself, as part of the story. But if you look at these kinds of progressive books, like this book, Superman Smashes the Klan, on top of all of that, there is another argument. An argument which is supposed to speak directly to the audience, and to change the mind of the audience directly. This is the type of argument that I'm talking about. This is the type of education that I'm talking about. Not something that is meant to be within the story, something that is overlaid on top of the story itself. And again, I would say that the venue, the schools and the libraries that they're trying to push this out into, this is a clear indicator that this is what this book is. It is an argument. It is a piece of education that they need to get out there.
Not everything is an argument. It's a story. This is a recreation of a radio play that you admitted on your own exposed the Klan. How is this an argument? Oh, that's the only way you can frame this to try to condemn the book. That's why.
And all drama is based on conflict. From the beginning of time, going all the way back to Beowulf, and all drama is based on a conflict of some sort. So conflict in some ways can be, this book or this comic or this movie inspires heated discussion because it presents a point of view, or it presents multiple points of view. And
where are these people when Frank Miller does something crazy? Why don't they go on him like they do these people? I don't know. Let's continue.
Right.
Now, what is this argument that they're trying to present? Let's get into the meat of this. Well, I'll say right up front that Gene Yang can actually be a good writer. If he lays off the progressivism, he's not too bad of a writer. I've read some of his stuff, which was pretty good. And I think he understands the subtlety of the DC way of doing things. I think he's a good enough writer to look at stuff that Marvel puts out and say to himself, well, look, that's just too in your face. You need to be much more subtle about what you have to say. So I want to talk about this argument and how Gene Yang makes this argument in his subtle way, and how it is extremely irrational in its argumentation. So first off, I'll give you a little background on the book itself, because the book is a retelling of a story that was originally told in the late 1940s on the Superman radio drama called Superman Smashes the Klan. And it was at that time.
It was called Superman and the Klan of the Fiery Cross, but it's okay. I'll let that slide.
Supposed to be an argument, again, exactly as it is today, I would say, as it is presented today. It was supposed to be an argument to convince people, children in particular, of a very specific thing. Now, what was going on was that by the late 1940s, the Ku Klux Klan was pretty much irrelevant within America, but you had a movie that came out called Birth of a Nation. And this movie was supposed to show the KKK in a very positive light. And it gave the Ku Klux Klan a shot in the arm, and their membership went up. So you had the people over at the Superman radio play saying, okay, we want to fight against this as best we can, with our little radio play. And by the way, all this has been well documented because they've actually written books about this radio play as a piece of history that changed America and how it was structured. But to add to that, I would say that the writers of this show probably needed a new generic villain for Superman to beat on because, well, the Nazis were defeated. The war had just ended and the Nazis were defeated. So they needed a new enemy for Superman to smash. So they picked the Klan. They were going to kill two birds with one stone.
That's not what happened. They didn't just randomly pick the Klan. It was put out intentionally with the help of a psychologist to make the story good, cohesive, and do what it needed to do. You're lying now. This isn't some random choice they made. Well, we ran out of Nazis. We should have them fight. Superman can fight just about anybody. That's why you have foils like Lex Luthor, Metallo, and all these other characters that do date back several decades.
And on top of that, wasn't there a was it Batman or Black Panther in his comic that fought the Klan?
Black Panther directly. Matter of fact, Jack the King Kirby during that was constantly getting grief from an alleged American section of the Nazi Party, which oddly enough even Hitler didn't like, because he found them to be an embarrassment. But they said, hey, pick a lamppost down on the street, and that's the one we'll hang you from. And he's like, all right, here's the one. Let's go fight. None of them showed up. And then he got a call from his office saying, hey, there's a guy saying he'll meet you in the lobby and he's going to beat you to death for being Jewish. So old Jack rolled up his sleeves and his big old forearms and went lunking downstairs. And guess who wasn't there? The guy who threatened him. Like, don't play that game about these old comics and old writers. Kirby literally killed actual Nazis with a gun. The man had no problem smacking people.
Kirby was the king.
Yeah, and they screwed him over like they did Ditko and other people, but that's a topic for another time. Let's see here. A psychologist helped write Superman stories in some cases. Did Thundercats learn from the best? I don't necessarily think that's I think that's correlation that doesn't necessarily prove causation, but let's continue.
Because what they were doing was they wanted to present Superman as the enemy of the Klan. Because the main audience for this radio play were children. Now, it wasn't...
That's factually incorrect. While it was geared towards children, radio, and here, also, I will quote somebody who is often seen as more right-wing. Razor Fist, when he did his video series on The Shadow, really, really good. Like, really good. You need to look at it. He said, radio at that time was bigger than anything else, to a point to where television probably still has not reached its expanse. The internet probably has. But radio, you took it everywhere. You took it everywhere.
Yeah, radio had a captive audience with nothing competing against it.
So it garnered a lot of audiences. You don't think grown people like Superman just as much as kids did? How do you think you have idiots going on like Seduction of the Innocent if they hadn't even at least peeked at the comics? Like, come on, man. Use your brain. Is it there? Anywho, continuing.
Entirely children, but their main audience was children. So the whole point was that you would have these little children listening to this radio play, and they would go out and pretend to be Superman, in their living rooms, in their backyards, in the schoolyard, in the playground. They would pretend to be Superman, and playing good guy, bad guy, one guy would be Superman, and the rest of everybody else would have to be your generic villain. And who would this new generic villain be? Well, that would be the Ku Klux Klan.
I'm pretty sure it would have been generally anybody, honestly. I think that's how kids' imagination works. When I was a kid, you could have been Skeletor, you could have been Beastman, you could have been a villain from a different series. It didn't matter. It's the way kids' imagination works. But
exactly.
Wait until you hear what his rationale for this is. It's amazing.
And the reason why they wanted to specifically have this out there was not only to substitute this new generic villain from Nazis to the KKK, but they wanted to impact America in the fact that you would have adults, either the parents of these children or the teachers or other people, looking at these children playing. And these children would be saying, I'm Superman, I'm the good guy, I'm fighting against the KKK. And your parents would be affected in the way that they would say to themselves, hey, look, my kid hates the KKK. Maybe I should not have anything to do with them.
Did you catch that?
Yeah.
There are very few words I could use to describe the depths of the ignorance of that statement.
Please try.
This dude's trying to make the argument that the reason why the radio play was put out is to convince kids that the Klan was bad, so the parents wouldn't associate with the Klan because they're worried their kids wouldn't like them anymore. It totally didn't expose what the Klan was like to kids and adults, and it totally wasn't a value that adults held independently of what their kids liked, that we don't want dick to do with the Klan because we know what they are, we know what they do, we know what values they hold, and we just got done killing a bunch of chumps for doing this too.
Right.
They knew better.
Yeah.
We had other problems at home. Absolutely. This is still, we had problems to a point. We still have quite a few problems in terms of equity. But this this idea, well, they did it to get to the kids. How insidious. No, you mental moron. Good Lord.
Oh yeah, because again, radio was for everybody. It wasn't, it was like the original, 3 channels on American broadcast TV were for everybody. They were for general consumption. I don't understand why this is such a hard concept historically to grasp.
Also, real quick, Autobot Starscream, the KKK sucks. Eat your Wheaties. No. It was Kellogg's Pep. P-E-P, Pep. And for anybody who's seen old cartoons that make fun of radio plays where they have the dramatic organ music, I am glad to admit that is not a stereotype. It is real, and it is fantastic. Real quick to Cape World Comics, I think Vandal Savage was also a friend of the Nazis. It was revealed in Final Crisis. Vandal Savage is Cain, like the biblical Cain. So, the world's first murderer, a friend of Nazis. You don't say. Continuing.
So what this argument was originally, it was an appeal to fear. I would say it's an appeal to shame as well, but that's a subsection of appeal to fear. This was an irrational argument called appeal to fear.
What's irrational about disliking and not wanting to deal with people who are violent, psychotic, and insane?
I feel like he thinks he's making a cogent point. I don't think he has the benefit of hearing his own playback because he's not making a logical argument. He's not connecting dots here.
Here, let me be a little more blunt here, buddy. FourthAge, you're arguing in favor of the Klan. Like I'm not being cheeky. I'm not being dishonest. That's what you are doing at this point. I don't know. Do you have some friends, somebody with some common sense you could have passed this on to and said, hey, can you overlook this for me? Tell me what you think, because I've done that with people, and they've done it with me, and there's been some corrections made. I think you need a buddy that's not dumb, who can point out your stupid arguments.
I'm not trying to at all make excuses for the guy. My brain is literally trying to go. My brain is like, there's no way he could be making this argument. There must be something he's missing. Like
brain cells.
Yeah.
It gets worse.
Because what it was doing was showing these parents that, hey, if I keep up this mindset that I support the KKK, well, I'm going to lose the affection of my child who hates the KKK because he loves Superman, and therefore I should give up any notion of these ideas whatsoever.
What's wrong with that?
Also, by that logic, anything the parent doesn't want their kid imbibing in or anything, the parent would magically just immediately kowtow to the child, and that's not how parenting works.
Yeah, exactly. He's looking at the modern lens of helicopter parenting, and that was not at all a thing in 1946.
And on top of that, my kids don't like the Klan, so I used to stop. No, parents stopped of their own volition because they found out what the Klan was like. That's why. You are.
And then
go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, and there were a certain number of them that never did stop because some people are just rotten. Yeah.
The weed of crime bears bitter fruit. Anyways, continuing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what happened. Now, these people claim that the sharp drop in the KKK and their membership after this came out was due to this Superman radio play and how it affected, again, the children and the adults through these children.
Also, I just have to make this commentary. Dude, you're lucky this is a Superman comic and not a Punisher comic. You are so... If this was a Punisher comic, it wouldn't be Superman trying to reason with these people and like, hey, this America can be for you too. If you stop the vile values, it'd be like, you're all criminals and I'm going to kill every single one of you in the most horrifically violent way and tactical manner I possibly can because I'm the Punisher and that's what I do. I had to say that. I had to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Continuing.
So that's your historical background. And when we look at what Gene Yang has talked about when he wants to represent this radio play, he wants to present it as close as he can, as much as possible, to that original radio play. And I would say that he is trying to do the exact same thing that originally the creators of that story were trying to do. He's trying to get this story into the hands of young people so that they can, in turn, affect the older people who are their parents and their teachers and shame them and guilt them into giving up very specific ideas. Now, it appears from what Gene Yang has said that it's not entirely the KKK that he is against. He's not saying he's for them in any way. But again, he's using them as a placeholder. They could be space aliens for all he cares. They are simply a placeholder for a representation of certain ideas.
Because the Klan held those ideas. And if you're going to get mad that he's differentiating between the people and the ideas, that's a very biblical concept. It's called hating the sin, not the sinner. It's also giving hope to people who might be involved with these type of mindsets that it's okay to change. There is everything good and nothing wrong with that.
I do not understand this whole line of thought where it's like it's bad to make people feel bad about these values of this organization that everybody almost uniformly agrees are bad.
I told you your brain would hurt by the end of this.
Oh my God.
Now keep in mind, this is all after he's read this comic. He says he's read it, so let's continue.
Because he specifically says he didn't present these members of the Clan of the Fiery Cross, as they're called within the book, as being cookie-cutter villains. He said they had to be much more nuanced than that, and he had to actually show some good sides and some bad sides to them. What he specifically said was, and while I'm not presenting that ideology as a good thing, I do hope that there is a little bit of humanity in the bad guys in our version. So what he is actually against is the ideas behind these people.
Which is good.
Yeah,
That's a good
that's because if those people didn't have those ideas, then they wouldn't be targets for concern.
Also, real quick, Autobot Starstream says if everyone loved the Klan, slavery, and racism until Superman changed their mind, it would make Superman a leader and wise teacher on level Optimus. I'm going to do a hot take here. Everybody ready? I'm a hardcore Transformer fan. Optimus would have to be several meters taller to touch Superman's boots. Just in general. Just going to put that out there. Superman's a good leader. Optimus kind of wasn't. But anyways, continuing.
It's not the people themselves, and I would say it's not even the organization of the KKK itself either. It's the ideas behind this. This is what he specifically indicates with what I just read. It's the ideology that he's against. And so the argument that he makes is very subtle and goes this way. The book is not actually about Superman. Superman is a secondary character. The main characters of this book are this little boy and this little girl who are Chinese American, the son and daughter of a Chinese immigrant family. Now, what you're supposed to do in this book is to identify with them because they're the main characters. And Gene Yang, by the way, is using his own experience and his own family's experience being a Chinese American child of an immigrant family to inform the writing of this entire thing. So what he wants to do is to get the people who are reading this book to identify with this little boy and very specifically the little girl who's about 10 years old. But of course, you only have 3 issues. How are people going to identify with these characters? Typically, that's not going to happen, especially...
What? You can identify with any character within any amount of time. It depends on your personal preference.
I just got to point this out. He's really been harping on this whole thing about how this book is being given to kids to compel them to not like the Klan and the Klan's values and the people who comprise the Klan. And that's already problematic enough, we've just discussed. Saying it out loud, you really can see the stark stupidity here. But to put it on its head, to flip the script a little bit, Mr. Rogers, okay, Mr. Rogers had to sue the KKK Because the KKK found somebody to imitate his voice, do phone recordings or some kind of recordings to give to children. This is documented, okay? So the manipulation that he is saying is going on here doesn't even compare to the amount of ideological seduction that the KKK has been involved in, targeting the same audience.
Yeah, I don't think this guy recognizes that we got really close to having a Klan member as a president. Like they were like lice. They were everywhere in society for a long, and they might very well be. They just gotten better at hiding, unfortunately. Like the CIA and the FBI had to root them out. And I'm not going to say that's because the CIA and FBI are really good Americans and they were doing a patriotic duty. It's actually that's because they really don't like anybody else doing control, because that's just the way governments work. But when you have them having to root them out, that's because they're a legitimate problem. At least, if nothing else, than to actual democracy or the ruling class they are in. So they were obviously some form of problem, regardless of your personal fifis on this one, FourthAge. All right, so continuing.
If you're dealing with children. So the point is that he has Superman identify with these characters. And how does he do that? Well, in his mind, the entire purpose of Superman, the entire reason for Superman being who he is, the hero that he is because he's an immigrant. That's it.
Yes. 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 Because he is an immigrant, like Shuster and Spiegel were, because he came to America and he embodied the ideals of the nation even as an immigrant, because the ideal of America is it's for everyone and we're a great melting pot. Oh my God, you're dumb. You think what you said is some clever subversion or some sort of gotcha, but you literally encapsulated who Superman is and what he represents to a T.
I would love to know what he thinks Superman should be.
His power fantasy.
Well, that's right. That gets back to that whole thing about you should be heroic, not tolerant, which gets back to that sliding scale of personal definitions.
Yes, but only heroic in the sense that you get on YouTube and you yell at people whose values are different than yours, not heroic as in you actually go do something good for society. Anyways, continuing.
It wasn't because he was taught to be a good and virtuous person. It wasn't because of his upbringing or any of his choices. It's because he's an immigrant.
Hey, Michael, were both sets of Superman's parents in this comic series?
Were.
Yeah. Did both of them talk about the different values and ideals that he was raised with?
Yes.
Yeah, and were those ideals maybe, possibly, kinda, just the American dream and being a good person?
Yes.
Okay, wanted to make sure I'm not crazy. All right, continuing.
He specifically says this over and over again. You even, in this book, have Ma and Pa Kent, who are the good old people who raised him, being portrayed as aliens to him, being portrayed as people who are trying to get away from the idea that he is any kind of immigrant at all.
No, they weren't portrayed as aliens to him. His mind was trying to reconcile something he had been hiding from himself. And they were trying to hide where he came from because of how much it troubled him, because he almost accidentally nuked a school bully with his laser vision.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And now, and in the modern sense, meaning in 1946, he told those visions of his parents, you know, pretty much, you guys are making me look insane. People think I'm talking to myself. I need you to go away. At one point in the book, like, this is so ridiculous.
It is. But, you know, he's read it. He understands it completely. Let's continue.
Trying to hide those facts from him. So he's portraying Ma and Pa Kent as being, you know, your ugly white people who don't want to think about immigrants, because Superman is an immigrant.
That's not what they were portrayed as. Also, parents hiding horrible things from their kids or strange things. You think I had any concept of what my old man did when I was a kid? When my concept and point of reference for military was G.I. Joe, you think I had any clue that what Vietnam was like and how horrible it was and what damage it did to everyone on either side of that conflict going on until the day they died? Of course I had no clue. I barely understand it now in my mid-30s because there's only so much you can grasp when you weren't involved. Like, this dude is dumb. Continuing.
So the point is, if you're reading this book to begin with, you are obviously someone who likes Superman. Therefore, you identify with Superman. And since
I can like a character and not identify with them. I like Danny Phantom. He's a teenage doofus. I don't identify with him in the least bit. I can promise that.
I really like Snake Plissken. I don't identify with him at all. Like, I'm never going to be a dude with an eye patch that like rescues corrupt presidents out of walled up, American cities in a dystopian future.
Hey, we might get there. Don't.
we might, but I guess what I'm saying is I'm not a complete nihilist like Snake Plissken is, but it doesn't mean I don't find him entertaining. But I recognize in myself, I like Han Solo. I'm nothing really like him. I'm more like Luke Skywalker, as an example. So it's a thing.
Just God, this is so dumb.
In the book, Superman identifies with this little girl and this immigrant family by himself, recognizing how much his immigrant status affects him. Then you identify with the little girl and the little boy.
It's not the immigrant status; it's the fact that they're both foreigners in a strange land. They're both trying to deal with their own identities.
Yeah, and you can find things to identify with in anybody. I was actually telling people while you were dealing with the whole while you were dealing with the pizza thing, that there were some very overt things in this book that happened with Roberta in one section that I specifically identified with, that I had never seen in a comic book ever, and they were to a thing like part of my life experience that I'd never seen represented in any kind of fiction. Was weird. So putting that out there.
We only got 6 minutes. Let's power through. Let's go.
Through Superman. And the real irrational part of this argument comes next, because it proceeds upon a logical fallacy. And it's a formal fallacy. It doesn't have anything to do with the matter of the story. It has to do with the way that the argument is presented. Something is wrong with the form. It's irrational. And the argument can be broken down in this way. Superman fights people who are bad. This little girl is a proxy for Superman. These people who are in the Klan in the book are opposed to this little girl and how she sees the world. They're
opposed to her entire family because she's not a literally quote-unquote pure race. That's why it's not about her personal worldview.
Therefore, the people opposed to this little girl and the ideas that they express are automatically bad. Now, there are 2 points that I have to bring up here. Number 1, again, if this was simply an argument being made inside the story for the internal consistency of the story itself, it would actually have a place. But I'm not talking about that argument. I'm talking about this argument that is overlaid on top of the story and is supposed to be speaking directly to the person. That's why I'm focusing on this. Number 2, what I'm focusing on is the form of this argument, not the matter. When you look at logic and reason, there are 2 different things that you need in order for your argument to be rational. It needs to have correct form, and it needs to have true matter. Now, I'm not dealing with the matter at all. I'm not talking about the Klan, whether they are good or evil.
Then I suggest you get some moral standards.
Just said, he just said, in order to have a good argument, you have to deal with the matter. And then he said in the next breath, I'm not dealing with the matter at all. And I'm like, so you don't have a good argument. You literally you outed yourself as not having a good argument by your own rules.
He's not very knowledgeable about self-owning. Let's continue.
I'm not talking about any of that. All of that has to do with the matter. What I'm talking about is the form. This argument is deficient in its form because...
Like you're deficient in the brain. Oh!
If your argument is deficient in its form, then you don't even have to move on to the matter. Because once it's deficient in its form, you already know that it's illogical and irrational. And this argument itself is a formal fallacy because it commits the fallacy of affirming the consequent or denying the antecedent, depending on how you want to look at it. And that's exactly what's going on here. They're trying to argue that all of the ideas held by the people who are opposed to this girl are automatically bad because this girl is a substitute for Superman, and Superman fights people who are bad. Therefore, anyone who fights Superman and all of their ideas are automatically bad.
No, he's saying that the people who are against this little girl are bad because they're racist, unironic bigots who are trying to terrorize and at one point murder children and people that oppose them.
Look, I just got to ask, have you ever seen the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, The Aviator?
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. It's about Howard Hughes. And Howard Hughes is a really weird dude. All I'm trying to say with that is I haven't heard anybody talk this way since his performance as Howard Hughes in The Aviator. Like it, meaning nonsensical, just free flowing, illogical thought, irrational ramblings. Like I'm pretty convinced at this point that this guy is a candidate for collecting his own urine in milk bottles. Like I can't follow. I mean, okay, keep going.
All right, we're almost done. Don't worry. We can power through this. 4 minutes.
But again, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case if you're looking at the form of this argument. So this is a very irrational argument. And again, I keep talking about the ideas expressed by these people because Gene Yang himself has said he tried to present these villains as having humanity. You know, it's not these villains themselves that are the problem. It is the ideas behind these villains.
You don't say.
And the extension of this argument goes into this same formal fallacy again. It goes into this other irrational turn. And this other irrational turn is that the people in this book, these Klan members, what is the idea that they hold which needs to be opposed? Well, those ideas are that immigration is a bad thing. And if you read the little historical section at the end, the 5 pages that Gene Yang puts in there at the end of the book, this is exactly what he's talking about. The fact that people who are racists, people who are Nazis, people who are the KKK, what do? Well, they oppose immigration. And, oh, I forgot to mention earlier that one of the little indicators that show that Gene Yang is not talking directly against the KKK is that when he does his little historical overview, he talks about other kinds of riots where people who are immigrants got killed. And he says they weren't specifically done by the KKK, but they might as well have been.
Because they typify the same ideology. It's just repackaged and repurposed in different manners. That's why.
Yeah.
Oh, real quick, Amnesia Lane, you say you're anti-hypocrite. If you don't know actual Christianity, you trying to point out that me making insults, being anti-Christian, doesn't work. Christ insulted people. You're not very smart. Try harder to simp for this idiot. You're not going to do well, and if you were dumb enough to get in call with me, I would destroy you. And I think you know that. That's why you're playing stupid in my comment section. Here's your last chance. Either you drop the pretense and drop the stupidity, or I drop you. I'm sorry, I'm not one of these passive streamers that lets people get stupid in his comment section and doesn't address it. Not my type of nature. I'm very type A. Make your choice. Continuing.
So you see, he takes all different kinds of people and lumps them in with the fact that they hold this same idea, that they need to get rid of immigration. And again, this leads back to the same kind of fallacy that I was talking about before. Just because a bad person likes some idea doesn't automatically mean that that idea is bad. But this is the very argument that he is making.
Yes, because the idea of being racist is bad.
I mean, I got to give it to him on that one. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan's ideas have always been super popular with people, haven't they? I mean, they've
always.
really been winners. And you know, maybe he has a point. Maybe we need to, you know, just realize that what we didn't like about the Klan were their robes and their hats, but their ideas were great, and we should just own that. Like,
clearly. Actually, no. Let's go the opposite direction. Let's get some Ghostbuster costumes and start chasing some Klan members. Let's do this. We got this handled. All right, continuing.
You have bad people, and they are opposed to the idea of immigration. Immigration is automatically good.
Where does this guy keep getting the immigration statement from when the book doesn't address it at all?
The book doesn't address it. I've even been flipping back through it, trying to make sure that I didn't miss something, and I have not found a reference to it.
It's all right. Hold on to that, because we're almost done, and then I'm gonna tell you exactly what I think here.
And by extension, anyone who believes that immigration is not wholeheartedly a good thing is opposed to the goodness of Superman. That is to say, is opposed to the ideas of truth, justice, and the American way. Now, if you're still listening, you may be asking yourself, Why in the world am I going through all of this? Well, I'm going through all of this because this is exactly what is going on. You have these people at DC, and this writer in particular. They are presenting an argument with this story that is not part of the story, that is supposed to speak directly to the people who are reading.
How is the argument part of the story, or not part of the story, but it's in the story? I'm curious.
The book. They are trying to convince the people who are reading the book of a very specific kind of idea. But their argument is extremely irrational. It has nothing but irrational bases, one after another after another.
I think you're projecting, and you're not smart enough to notice it. You just described your own videos.
And, as I'm always saying in my other videos, what is that the definition of? Well, funny enough, if you look at the late 1940s definition of propaganda, that would be it. Propaganda, according to the late 1940s definition, it was trying to teach people something in a way that gets around their rational mind.
This is...
So,
go ahead.
So he's saying that that a rationally minded person is going to be like a Klansman.
Generally, yeah. Or
that's literally what he's saying.
They're going to push away this book because the book makes an irrational argument about how the Klan was vile and treacherous and horrible, and would even go after their own if they were not pure enough. Yes, that's clearly what a mentally stunted idiot. How in the world do you go for 23-something minutes defending the Klan and not realizing you're defending the Klan? Let's finish out.
Look, this guy.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this guy's dream is clearly to one day have people call him Grand Wizard. Oof. Maybe he just doesn't understand the implications. Oof. I don't know.
This book is quite specifically a piece of propaganda. And the thing that I find supremely funny about this book is the fact that it was generated off of a piece of entertainment from the late 1940s, right after the Second World War had ended. And yet, the quote-unquote progressive people who are putting this book out today are using it as a piece of propaganda to try to insert into the minds of young children their own progressive ideology.
Actually, no, everything in this has nothing to do with modern progressive ideology. It has to do with very few liberties in terms of the content was taken and changed.
Right.
It is. If you go back, Michael, and listen to the radio play, I was also genuinely surprised how much of it was directly adapted.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. No doubt.
The only real main difference in terms of terminology was they didn't use all the old school terms. They used some of them. When Chuck got called a sorehead, that was repeated a lot more in the radio play. But yeah, it's just this dude doesn't know what he's talking about at all.
Yeah.
But let's continue.
And yet, they are the ones who call us Nazis. So, if I've given you anything...
What do you mean us? What do you mean us?
That's what I'm wondering.
Who are they calling Nazis in this book? The Klan?
Again, it gets back to that whole thing where he's speaking for all people who happen to pull the lever for Republicans. And again, that is a very dangerous road to go down, because I have a lot of Republican friends and colleagues who would beat this guy up in an alley for doing that.
Yeah. I mean, look, my old man is a pretty staunch Republican. The man's latte dark, and because he was in the military, he has very little patience for the type of racist rhetoric that you hear coming from these type of people. Any sort of culture, the place you see races intermix and diverge into one single point of camaraderie is always going to be the military by nature of defense. He would not tolerate this rhetoric. As many problems as that man has, I've seen him deal with a racist individual once. And when I say once, that's because that's the only time he had to do it, and nobody tried to dick with him on that level ever again. But here's what I'm going to say, FourthAge. You are intellectually dishonest. You are an outright liar. You have lied directly multiple times about the content and purpose of this book. You are willfully and knowingly doing it. You are lying to people that are watching your videos and expecting you to be honest. Michael has touched on this, and so have I. When you have a following, you have a responsibility. You have an onus to not spread misinformation. And if you are corrected, to correct it as well publicly so that doesn't happen. Let's see here. Wait, this is an edited version of the video. I feel like you skipped a whole lot of arguments. The guy.
Oh, the guy. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Tim Ward. I don't know. This appears to be the full version of the videos from his channel. Yeah.
It is. But I will say there are some of you who are going to watch this when it's on video on demand after it's, percolated into YouTube. I've seen some of you in my comment section in this, guys. I'm not going to call you out by name, but I've seen you. You need to do some soul searching. You need to dig deep before you start deciding to agree with people who are lying to you without looking into it yourself. If you have a friend and you built trust over years to where it is generally accepted they're not going to lie to you, that's another matter altogether. This YouTuber's not your buddy. He's not your friend. He's feeding you a load of garbage and you're buying into it and you're eating it. Don't buy this actual propaganda. Look at his thumbnails. It's all clickbait. He's a rage baiter. All he wants to do is make you hate things so that he can get you interested. And now, granted, I'm not the most positive person in the world, but my arguments come down to how things are created and the onus of why. Not, well, I think that this thing it's not nice enough to clan members. No, my Animaniacs review was about the immoral actions of the corporation and how the writing and animation don't hit. I didn't go on a tirade about them darn SJWs wrote this blah, 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 blah. No, he's trying to sell you something. He's not here to review anything. He's not here to have honest intellectual discussions about it. He's here to get you riled up so you will start supporting him monetarily while he tries to put out a comic book for you. That's what 90% of these people in Comicsgate with larger channels do. They're grifters. They are trying to utilize and weaponize your hatred, which, by the way, again, hate is a very tenuous and treacherous relationship, to support them financially. Don't buy it. Be smarter. Doggone grifting liars. I'm so sick and tired of seeing them in our nerd spaces. There's a guy who goes by the moniker of Actual Context, and his videos are extremely politically charged, as is his value. I will not condemn him for that. But he coined a pretty good term for these people. They're anti-fans. They're not here to talk to you about the actual fandom or the problems within it. They're here to get you mad about something they've usually concocted without any context or without any knowledge of the medium, because it's what you want to hear. Have some self-reflection and some dignity. Good Lord.
It seems like there's two dominant categories for that right now. There's the outrage people like this guy. And then there's also the, and I hope this is in the minority, I really do. There's the, what I call the failed Instagram model, the one who actually is trying to rope in an audience very quickly through pandering so that they can then basically sell you into their online erotica content. I've seen that happen as well. And I saw it happen from a mile away. And so I feel you, man. I know, like, when you're seeing this stuff and you're looking at their audience, it's just like, what are you guys buying into? Like, yeah.
I hate dishonesty, and I don't care who it's from. I don't care why it's from. I don't care what side of the doggone aisle it's coming from. If I hear it from a preacher, they're going to hear it from me. If I hear it from some left-wing or right-wing political commentary, that's my value, because I try to be very apolitical on my channel, but let me be very clear about my value here. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you're trying to sell a load of garbage that I know is provably false, you're going to catch these hands. That's how this works. I have no idea what Golden Eagle is. The only book from the Comicsgate side of anything that I've ever bought was Common America, because I was curious, and the art's good, but the story's extremely weak, but that's a review for another time. But be careful who you follow. Don't trust but verify, is the old military saying. Trust but verify. Especially when you have somebody trying to sell you on something, you better find out their motive for it. If I'm telling you that this show's bad, it's because I don't want you to watch a show that's bad. It's not because I have some nefarious reasoning to, well, this show's really bad, but here's my Indiegogo for my show that's totally going to be effective if you just give me monies. Let's see here. Why don't you participate in one of these kind of reviewer streams like Literature Devil, Morning Nonsense, and Speak Your Mind? I'm not going to engage with anybody who unironically uses the name Devil as a screen name and thinks I should take him seriously. I've never even heard of Morning Nonsense. And whenever I have engaged these people, they literally freak out and lose their minds. I had a dude who goes by the screen name on Twitter of DC_United, and he made this really ridiculous post about Gary Frank. He blocked me, and I was just asking him a question about Doomsday Clock. So I went and I looked, and I've got the screencast for this if anybody needs it. But I went and looked. As a matter of fact, let me do better. Let me do you one better. One moment, because I will not be a hypocrite. Let's see here, just name it one. Browse. There we go. How they talk to creators. All right, so here's how the guy said, as you guys can see it on screen. All I did was point out Doomsday Clock is late. Is this how your artists treat your fans, DC Comics? So, I did the intelligent thing. I decided to look. So, let me go ahead and find the second image. Now, there's going to be a difference in the profile pictures because these screen caps were taken different times. So, I went and looked at what he had to say. Let's see here. Gary Frank was talking about some sort of thing in Greenland or something like that that Trump was relating to. And he responded to this comic creator. Read less, draw more. Doomsday Clock is 2 years late. Michael, if anybody, matter of fact, I know what the answer to this is, but if somebody came at you like that, how would you respond?
Oh, it would be on. You and I have been in the trenches on Twitter together more than a few times.
Catching these hands.
Yes. It would be, oh, you're coming at me like that? Joe Rando 42? Well, let's do this.
So somebody called him out on it. And his response, let's see, he was called out and said, to be fair, it's his account and he doesn't owe you his time just because you bought some of the books he worked on. People get tired of negativity and your comment was pretty rude. I don't care about the negativity aspect, but you should have some level of civility when engaging with creators. They don't have the barrier anymore that they used to before social media. So this guy's response was, maybe I'm tired of people who draw superheroes bashing my president. It was never about the work. You didn't like what the man was saying because of his personal values. That is weak. This is the type of garbage I see from these idiots in Comicsgate.
Okay, but is this one of those deals where this DC fan guy, like with this Superman thing, was this one of those things where there literally wasn't anything about the president, but he inferred it?
No.
Like this guy isn't...
The Gary Frank, I'll put it back up on screen, regarding the Greenland embarrassment and what is going on, Trump wants people to forget today. He was talking about Trump, this comic creator, on his personal Twitter account.
Right, but he's not drawing superheroes that are doing something to the president. He's just expressing some. Yeah, so that's a very misleading reply as well, because the way you can read that is that he's drawing comics that are politically loaded, just not true either.
No, but dude, I wouldn't even know if I wouldn't consider Doomsday Clock politically loaded. I consider it extremely confusing and needing to make more sense. But yeah, that's the dishonest aspect I've seen about a lot of these clowns. Well, I was just asking him a question. No, you were being a prick. And you were being a prick because he said something mean about the president. We need to stop treating politicians like there are football teams. Come on, people.
Yeah.
But that's really all we have to cover tonight. We've been here for 3 hours. I really appreciate your time, Michael. I really do. It's been a real blast having you on, even though I'm sure your brain hurts by now.
Oh, this was brain stirring for sure. Not in a compelling way or a scintillating way, just a mind-boggling, staggering. I feel like I have the mental acuity of a shoebox now, kind of way.
Well, I'm sure that you'll probably wake up to post notifications, maybe Twitter calling us SJW, soy boy, whatever, and just for the comment gators to know, I lift more than you.
Well, and on top of that, they're going to be really disappointed to find out that, as Thomas, you know this. I regularly go on world-class bullshitters and Midnight's Edge, and I'm connected with those guys too, because I'm not afraid of having conversations.
No.
I don't base my friendships around politics. And some people say that's foolish, but I don't, because I've met and understood and grown relationships with a lot of really decent people. Do I always agree with them? Hell no. No, I don't. You can be friends with people you don't agree with. That's the thing. Am I ever going to be friends with a Klansman? Hell no. But it's not so open and shut. You know what I mean? Like, there's people out there who aren't Klansmen, but who don't agree with me about things.
Correct.
I don't know.
Real quick, John Caulfield said, should actors be forcing their political views on Twitter? It's their personal Twitter. I don't care what sector of entertainment or whatnot they're on. They have a right to express whatever their values are. Regardless of their following, they should do so with care and in sobriety, granted. But I'm not going to say, well, these people shouldn't be allowed to talk about their personal values, because then that can be turned on me. And I will not do that to somebody. Except for pedophiles. I'll do it to them.
Right. Yeah.
But we're going to go ahead and end this for now. Thank you guys for joining us. And thank you again to Michael for being willing to get in the trenches with me and deal with this mind-hurty thing.
Yeah. And I really like this thing from Laser Kid. He says, I'm right-wing generally, but super sick of the right-wing outrage YouTubers. And Laser Kid, I just want to tell you that that problem is also a thing on the left as well. There are a lot of left outrage YouTubers as well. But you're right, the outrage YouTube thing in general. And I'm glad that you are introspective enough to be objective about your side as well. Like I said, I'm a centrist, and so I have friends in both areas. But just to add to your statement is that the outrage thing in general is a real problem. So it's glad to know that guys like you are around, Laser Kid.
And I politically identify as angry, and these hands are rated E for everyone. Good night, everybody.
Night.